Organized planning is very, very important. You follow this particular lesson to the letter, and you have done yourself a big favor. Organized planning is the crystallization of desire into action. Well, we've gone 4 or 5, now we're at number 6. This is vitally important, organized planning. You follow this particular lesson to the letter, and you have done yourself a big favor. You see, without an organized plan, you become the plaything for what's going on around you. And that's what most people do. They're pulled here and there and all over the place. People's suggestion, the radio, the television, on it goes. You want to take control. Rather than work from the outside in, you want to work from the inside out. This is where you go from the abstract to the concrete with your desire. It's where it's the crystallization of your desire into action. Now, Napoleon Hill dedicated, in my particular lesson, 60 pages to this one subject. 60. That's almost twice as many as the other principles that he was working with. Organized planning is very, very important. Now, to execute this step properly, it's not just your business or your idea that must get organized. You know, it's also you as an individual. You see, we've got to get ourselves going. We've got to get ourselves properly organized, not just the business or the idea. Now, he's got 4 steps here. A, ally yourself with a group of as many people as you may need for the creation and carrying out of your plan, making use of the mastermind principle described in a latter chapter. Compliance with the instructions is absolutely essential. Don't neglect this. B, before forming your mastermind alliance, decide what advantages and benefits you may offer the individual members of your group in return for their cooperation. No intelligent person would either request or expect to work without adequate compensation, although this may not always be in the form of money. C, arrange to meet with the members of your mastermind group at least twice a week, and more often, if possible, until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan or the plans for the accumulation of money. Now, D, maintain perfect harmony between yourself and every member of your mastermind group. Napoleon Hill was emphatic when he pointed out that if you fail to carry out this instruction to the letter, you may expect to meet with failure. Now, Hill knew something about this. This was a stickling point with his mentor, Andrew Carnegie. If people didn't work in harmony, like he said, he made room for somebody to take their place. That was essential. You know, and when you stop and think about this, it's so important. If people are not working in harmony, what's going on? You've got all kinds of chaotic energy going on, and that's what manifests in results. When you've got a team that are really working smoothly and in harmony, like we mentioned with Knute Rockne, his team was in harmony because that's the kind of leadership he provided. That's the kind you want to provide. That's the kind of leadership, and that's the kind of lesson that you want to follow. Keep in mind these important facts. First, you're engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Second, you must have the advantage of the experience, education, native ability, and imagination of other minds. This is in harmony with the methods followed by every person who has ever accumulated great fortunes. And goodness knows, no one knew them better than Hill. And he points out if the first plan which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this plan fails to work, replace it with another one, in turn, and another one, and so on until you find a plan which does work. All right? Right here is the point at which the majority of people meet with failure because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those that fail. All these top leaders, Edison, James J. Hill, Henry Ford, they were persistent. They had the picture in their mind. Think about it for a minute. James J. Hill, he's going to build a railroad from the east to the west coast of the United States. Most people wouldn't even be able to conceive the idea. He not only conceived it, he did it, but he met with failure. It was temporary defeat. And Hill points out that no follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. And that's the way Hill looked at it. He was building his railroad. He failed a few times, run out of money, raised some more money. But he kept the picture in his mind. He changed the plan, but he never changed the picture. See, a very good part of organized planning principle is dedicated to leadership. It's very, very important. Hill points out there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders and the other as followers. You got to decide at the outset whether you tend to become a leader in your chosen calling or remain a follower. Now, there's two forms of leadership. The first, and by far the most effective, is leadership by consent and with the sympathy of the followers. The second is leadership by force, without consent and sympathy of the followers. You see, Napoleon Hill outlined 11 major attributes of leadership. But you've got to get it straight first. Is it going to be by consent or is it going to be by force? See, if it's by force, there's a long, long history of people that have lost. They would win for a short period of time, but ultimately they would lose if they're operating by force. These were the dictators. These were the ones that it was their way or the highway. And history has proved that it doesn't work. For some of the greatest leaders, where we've already talked about Knute Rockne, one of the greatest leaders, there was no force there. He created the harmony that Napoleon Hill talks about, that Andrew Carnegie insists upon, and that you want to insist upon. Now, let's take a look at the 11 major attributes of leadership. The first one was unwavering courage. I don't think anybody's going to want to follow someone that doesn't demonstrate courage in their decision and in their way of living. They're not going to want to follow them. So you've got to have this unwavering courage. The second one is in self-control. Now think for a moment. If you're going to follow someone, you want to follow someone who's in charge of themselves. If they can't control themselves, how are they ever going to control anything else? So self-control was another major part. The third one is a keen sense of justice. My goodness, that is so important. Any one of these 11 attributes are vitally important, but the keen sense of justice, that's very, very important. Spend some time thinking about this. You may sit down with an associate or one of your closest advisors and discuss each one of these 11 points. The fourth one is definiteness of decision. Now, we point out in the second on decision, the only prerequisite to making a decision is, do you want to? You don't have to know how to do it. In fact, if you're going after a proper goal, you won't know how to do it. But you've got to be definite insofar as your decisions are concerned. Number 5 is definiteness of plans. You're going to be definite about your plans. Now, you're going to find that you probably have to change your plan. You may have to change your plan a lot of times. I think Edison's recorded he changed his plan 10,000 times before he came up with the incandescent light. But you've got to have a definite plan. And that's the plan you're going to follow. You never change the goal, change the plan. Number 6, the habit of doing more than you're being paid for. Do you know, that is probably one of the greatest lessons that I learned in all of Napoleon Hill's material. That was demonstrated by my mother. I saw my own mother doing that, who was a phenomenal example for my brother and sister and myself in growing up. She was just a great example. She always went the extra mile. She always did a little more than she was being paid for. And the people that do that ultimately get paid for more than they're doing. It's a bit of a paradox, and it's confusing to some people. Just be prepared to do more than you're being paid for. Number 7, a pleasing personality. So, you know, we talk about number 7, a pleasing personality, and we're relating this to leadership. I think Zig Ziglar put it very well. God bless him, he's gone now, but he gave us some great information. He said, be strong, but not rude. Be kind, but not weak. Be humble, but not timid. Be proud, but not arrogant. They were such great lessons that he gave us. And I think they're lessons that we can follow. We can follow them to the letter. Now let's take a look at number 8. Sympathy and understanding. Well, you know, understanding comes out in almost all of Hill's lessons. I may change that to empathy from sympathy. The ability to get into the other person's mind and see it from their point of view. Understand why they're doing what they're doing, why they're saying what they're saying. I think Covey put it very well. He said, listen not to hear, but to understand. When you're communicating with someone, don't listen to hear, listen to understand. Well, number 8, sympathy and understanding. Number 9, mastery of detail. In other words, get the details, all right? Get the details. Do you know, there's a cute story about Michelangelo. Michelangelo was creating David. And a friend dropped by one day, and he was admiring David, and he said, boy, you're doing a great job. Then the friend went away on a vacation. He was gone for a few months, and he came back, and he went back to visit his old buddy, Michelangelo. And he looked, and he said, I see you haven't been working on David. He said, I haven't been working on him. He said, I've worked on him every day that you were gone. He said, I fixed the fingernail on the right hand. I fixed the nostril, the left side of the nostril. I got both eyebrows totally straightened out. And the toes, I've got the toes perfect. Well, the guy said, yeah, he says they're trifles. Michelangelo looked at him, he said, well, they may be trifles. But let me tell you something. Trifles make perfection, and perfection is no trifle. And it ties into mastery of detail. See, Michelangelo, he was a master of detail. Number 10, willingness to assume full responsibility. Without question, everyone should take full responsibility for their life, for what they're doing, for the results they're getting. And if you're going to be a leader, you've got to take full responsibility for everything that happens under your leadership. And sometimes it may not be what you're doing. This is very, very important. Number 11, cooperation. Where there's no cooperation, there's no harmony. Where there's no harmony, what did Carnegie say? He'd make room for a person that brought the harmony. You've got to have cooperation. There's got to be cooperation between you and the people you're leading. And we've got to understand how to do that. And we're going to find that the other 10 attributes that we're talking about here will probably bring that cooperation right up to the surface. These are important points. They're important points for you to really pay attention to. I would review this often. Maybe take and write each one of them out on a slip of paper. Put it in your pocket, carry it around with you. Just bring it out, keep reviewing it on a daily basis until you get to the point where, boom, it's habitual in your thinking. And when it becomes habitual in your thinking, you become a habitually strong leader. There's another important aspect of the organized planning that I'm going to recommend you really burn into your mind because it's very important and it's something you can really turn into a habitual behavioral pattern that'll make you a much stronger leader. And it's the principle of QQS. You might write that down, QQS. That's quality and quantity of service rendered and the spirit in which it is rendered. That'll determine, to a large extent, the price and the duration of employment. Now think about this for a moment. Quality of service shall be construed to mean the performance of every detail in connection with your position in the most efficient manner possible, with the object of greater efficiency always in mind. Quantity of service should be understood to mean the habit of rendering all the service of which you are capable at all times, with the purpose of increasing the amount of service rendered as greater skills develop. Now, spirit of service shall be construed to mean the habit of agreeable, harmonious conduct with all, and that's going to induce cooperation in association with your fellow people that you're working with, the employees or whatever. Now, this next part, you want to put a big, important stamp in your mind about it, on self-analysis, our personal inventory. Let's take a look at what is going on inside in our life. You see, ultimately, the results I get are going to be determined by what's going on in Bob's mind. It's going to be exactly the same as you. Self-analysis of personal inventory is vital. I think this is probably why Napoleon Hill did a respectable amount of research into this area. And he emphasized time and time again that a person thoroughly analyze themselves, what they're doing and what they're not doing. I know personally over the years, self-analysis has really made a big difference for me. I've been involved in doing this for many, many years now, and it's a very important part of everything that I do. I don't care what it is I'm doing or who I'm doing it with. I've got a magnificent library of books, no question about it. And I keep building it, and I keep expanding on it. There's one book that falls into this category that probably stands out over all the others. It was given to me by a woman in a seminar many, many years ago. It's Vernon Howard's book, Mystic Path to Cosmic Power. Vernon Howard, The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power. It's probably one of the best books that I have ever read on introspection. And since everything happens in our outside world is a reflection of what's going on in the inside world, it's something that we want to pay special attention to. Now, Napoleon Hill felt it a very important part of our study. I do as well. And the more I study this, the more I'm convinced that it is. So you might want to get a hold of Vernon Howard's book. Get into these success principles, because they're going to cause you to look at you. Now, he talks about organized planning in all areas. We need to plan insofar as our business is concerned, no question about it. But we also have to look at our business as a reflection of ourselves. We're going to make it work, or we're not going to make it work. So we really want to spend time looking at ourselves and taking these success principles and say, how am I incorporating those with my life? Super important subject, self-analysis. Hill thought it was important, so do I. I want you to think it's important.
No follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. You are engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Get out your notebook. Write organized planning in capitals at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
Anyone that has ever studied any of Napoleon Hill's work knows how important decision is. Very, very important subject.
Here's one of the biggest challenges you face in regards to the principle of decision. It sounds like this.
I'm going to do this as soon as I get the money. I'm going to do this as soon as the kids finish school. I'm going to do this as soon as I get the promotion. One idea after another. The decision is not executed. Why is it that approximately 90 or 90-some% of the population stay there? Well, Hill found out through a survey of over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure. They experienced it because of lack of decision. That was the major cause of their failure. They weren't making the decision because they couldn't see how it was going to happen. The people that were making the decisions, they didn't see how it was going to happen either. They just knew it would. Do you know, anyone that has ever studied any of Napoleon Hill's work knows how important decision is. He wrote an entire chapter on decision in Think and Grow Rich. Decision was one of the principles of success. Very, very important subject. A lot of people don't understand it. We don't teach it in school. You can go right through our educational system without ever learning how to make a decision. And strangely enough, parents wanting to protect their children make their decisions for them, sometimes right into adulthood. So the person never learns how to make a decision. Now, in the very first page of the decision chapter, Napoleon Hill pointed out very clearly that successful people all make decisions very fast, change them very slow, even when they change them at all. And he pointed out the people that have trouble with success make decisions very slow and then change them fast and often. There's something about decision we should understand, and I think it's brought right to the surface in the story of Henry Ford and his famous V8 engine. You see, when Ford decided that he was going to produce his famous V8 engine, he chose to build the engine, the whole 8 cylinders, in one block. He called all his engineers and he told them that he wanted them to lay out a plan on how this could be done. Write it all out for him. So the engineers did that. They come back and they told him, to a man, they all complete agreement, it was impossible. This could not be done. I love Ford's response. He said, do it anyway. Now think of that. Here's a group of engineers. They've laid out the plan on putting 8 cylinders in one block. They said it was impossible, it couldn't be done. And Ford said, do it anyway. Now, why would he say that? Now, as the story goes, they went away and they worked on it, and they come back, same conclusion. It couldn't be done. He said, do it anyway. Now, think about this for a moment. The engineers were employed by Ford. He was the one that was signing the checks. He said, do it anyway. Were they going to argue with the man? So it went away, and they keep working on it. But you know, and I know, that he did put the 8 cylinders in one block. You see, the only prerequisite to making a decision is, do you want to? As you study, and as you get into all of Napoleon Hill's work, you will know that all these great achievers, like Edison, like Ford, they built the image of what they wanted in their mind. They became totally relaxed. They got that image very clear in their mind. What they were really doing was turning it over to infinite intelligence. And infinite intelligence then would feed the answers back to them. Now, they may not have been able to articulate exactly what was happening. We're going way back 50, 75 years. Today, we know that. At least some of us know it. Not everyone knows it. When you go to make a decision, think of Ford and his 8 cylinders in one block. The wise ones couldn't be done. All the engineers couldn't be done. He said, do it anyway. You don't have to know how to make it happen. You just have to know you're going to make it happen. So when you make a decision, bang, that's it, and there's no going back. You don't change the decision. You may change the plan, which we'll talk about later, but not the decision. Be decisive. Make your decisions fast, change them very slow, if and when you change them at all. That is what Napoleon Hill found all the successful people did. You are on a program of success. You do it too.
The great decisions, which served as the foundation of civilization, were reached by assuming great risks, which often meant the possibility of death. Socrates' decision to drink the cup of poison rather than compromise his personal belief was a decision of courage. It turned time ahead 1,000 years and gave to people then unborn the right to freedom of thought and of speech. Get out your notebook, write decision in capitals at the top of the page, and then I'm going to use this principle of decision in the following way, and then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
A person that doesn't have persistence is not going to go very far. And persistence, I believe, is one of the most important.
Persistence is an essential factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent.
Of the 13 principles of success that Napoleon Hill lined up, I believe the most important one, and at least it is to me, is number 8, one he called number 8. I've had a difficult time just deciding on what order they do go in because they all run together, but number 8 was persistence. And on the very first page he wrote, there may be no heroic connotation to the word, but he said the quality is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. A person that doesn't have persistence is not going to go very far. I have shared something out of this book on persistence with thousands and thousands of salespeople all over the world. I want to share something he said, and I want you to really think about what I'm saying, and I want you to think about your goal. He said, there is no substitute for persistence. It cannot be supplanted by any other quality. Now think of that. He said, remember this, and it will hearten you in the beginning when the going may seem difficult and slow. He said, those who have cultivated the habit of persistence seem to enjoy an insurance against failure. Now, he said, no matter how many times they're defeated, they finally rise up towards the top of the ladder. Now, he says, sometimes it appears that there is a hidden guide. I love this. Whose duty is to test you through all sorts of discouraging experiences.
Those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying arrive, and the world cries, bravo, I knew you could do it. The hidden guide lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistent test. Those who can't take it simply don't make the grade. Those who can take it are bountifully rewarded for their persistence. They receive as their compensation whatever goal they are pursuing. Now, in another part of this, he was obviously in New York. He was sitting in a hotel room and he was looking down on Broadway. And he wrote, as these lines are being written, I look up from my work and I see before me, less than a block away, the great mysterious Broadway, the graveyard of dead hopes and the front porch of opportunity. He said, from all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is the human being calls success. He said, once in a while, someone steps out from this long procession of seekers, and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But he said, Broadway is not easily nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, and pays off in money only after a person has absolutely refused to quit. Then we know that this person has discovered the secret to conquer Broadway. And the secret is always inseparably attached in one word, persistence. You know, I have compared that to sales. I've compared it to success in engineering. In every walk of life, if you just take Broadway out and put your business, your industry in, it fits. Because you're going to be tested time and time again. So how do you develop this quality called persistence? Well, he tells you in here how to develop it. But I've come to the conclusion, if you don't have a proper desire, you're never going to develop persistence. Desire comes from something you want. It begins as a want. You've got to really want it. I think it stands to reason that you're not going to persist at something you don't enjoy. You're not going to persist at something you don't like. So a person has to start out with a want. This is all covered in desire. And that want has to really start cooking in your mind. And then you have to get emotionally involved with it. And it's the emotional involvement that plants that idea, properly plants it in your subconscious mind. You have to feed that then. And you feed it through faith. And it's the faith that you're going to reach this that causes you to keep focusing on it. Now, the will is a mental faculty that causes or enables you to focus. If you don't have a highly developed will, you won't focus. You're going to be scattered all over the place. All the outside world is going to beg your attention through your senses. You're going to be hearing, seeing, smelling, and everything outside is going to grab your attention. When you have a highly developed will, it's almost like you shut down the senses. You bring your mind to bear on the one concept that's really important to you, what you want. The outside world shut off. And then you start feeding that desire. It becomes easy then to persist. Now he tells us here there's 4 steps. He clearly outlines them. Anyone that wants to develop persistence. Now I would pay particular attention to this. I've shared this with thousands of people. It's very important. He said there are 4 steps which lead to the habit of persistence. They call for no amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, and but little time or effort. The necessary steps are, number 1, a definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. So here we go back to our desire again. If it isn't there, you're not going to develop it. So you've got to go back, do I really want this? Is it something that is very important to me? You see, most people, when they're setting goals, they don't go after what they really want. They go after what they think they can get. Or they go after something they've already got. And the goal is important because the goal is what causes us to move ahead in life. Goals are not to get. Goals are to grow. Cause us to stretch, to reach higher than we are right now in our growth. And if we set a goal just to go after something we already know we can get, that's sort of silly. I had a fellow one time in a seminar come up and ask me if he could talk to me about his goal. I said, sure. I said, what's your goal? And he told me he wanted to get a new car. And I said, okay, what kind of a car do you want? He said, a Pontiac. I said, well, they're nice cars. I've had a Pontiac. I said, how long you had the car? You got one now? And he said, yeah. He said, I've had it 4 years. I said, how old is the car? He said, 4 years. So I said, you're telling me that you had a new Pontiac 4 years ago, and now your goal is to get a new Pontiac. I said, you've known for 4 years how to get a new Pontiac. That wouldn't constitute a goal. You got to go after something you really want. See, he didn't understand the concept, so he had never developed persistence because he didn't have the proper goal. And if he graduates from that, then he's going after something he thinks he can get. He starts to measure his resources, his money. And he thinks, I could do this if this happened, that happens. That's not going to cut it. He's got to go past that. He's got to go after something he really wants. And he probably won't know how to get it. When we want something, it's coming from inside. It's causing us to stretch. And you've got to have something you really want, or you're never going to develop persistence. Now, he says the 8 step principles of success. Remember I mentioned there was 30 major causes of failure, but there's only 13 steps that's going to guarantee that you can develop wealth. And he's clearly outlined it, and persistence, I believe, is one of the most important. So when he says you've got to have this burning desire, if you're not going after something you really want, you won't develop it. And you've got to understand you don't have to know how to get it. People that have accomplished anything in their life, they didn't know how to get it when they set the objective. They just knew they would. We've covered this in the decision lesson. Pay particular attention to that lesson before you come back to this. He said, number 1, a definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. And number 2, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. Now we're going to point out where that plan might change. As a matter of fact, the plan probably will change because you're going to be led by the sixth sense. When we get into that, your intuitive factor, you're going to find that the way will be shown. And where you lay down your plan, the plan will probably be changed. But you never change the objective. You persist. You keep on going. Number 3, he said, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. That's very important. The people you associate with, they play an enormous role in your life. So you've got to be very careful about the people you spend a lot of time with. We are not thinking anywhere near as often as we choose to believe we are. And when we're not thinking, our mind is wide open. And so those negative suggestions are coming right in. And like that, we're snapped into a negative vibration. That's why this third part is so important. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. Do you know you can form the habit of just rejecting all negativity? You can get your mind onto such a positive frequency that none of the negative stuff is going to stick. It just doesn't resonate with your thinking. Number 4, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage you to follow through with both plan and purpose. But he says these 4 steps are essential for success in all walks of life. So you see, it really doesn't matter what you're doing. It's how you're doing it. It doesn't matter what the objective is, as long as you really want it. You've got to turn it into a burning desire. Otherwise, you will not persist. When you've got the idea properly planted in your mind, it starts to control you. And he points that out. He said, first you give life, action, and guidance to the idea. But then it'll take on a power of its own. And it gives life, action, and guidance to you. And it just keeps driving you. This idea of persistence cannot be given too much importance. Because it's that one quality inside that's going to keep you going. You're going to run into all sorts of discouraging experiences. Napoleon Hill was told that by Andrew Carnegie when he first set out on this mission. Now here's a guy that was starting out, a young reporter, and he was told by his mentor that you could do better than I'm doing. Now if that's where all of this philosophy originated with Andrew Carnegie, and then it was studied and passed on to us by Napoleon Hill, I think we should pay attention to it. Here's a poor young man that's going to go past the wealthiest man in the world. And he did. He accomplished more. Why? Because he kept giving himself the proper affirmations. But he wouldn't have done that had he not had the proper goal. You see, he sold himself on the idea that he could do something, and he had absolutely no idea how it was going to happen. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to pick the target that really is important to you. Otherwise, you'll never develop the persistence. And he said, you've got to turn it into a habit. Now, let's think of what a habit is for a moment. A habit is an idea that's planted in your subjective mind. And it's planted so often, bang, it automatically takes over, and it automatically expresses itself without any conscious thought. Habits make us. They also break us. And when you develop the habit of persistence, the idea of slowing down, the idea of stopping, it just doesn't enter your mind. You're going to keep going, it doesn't matter how tough it is. I can think of so many times in my life when everything in me wanted to quit, but I just couldn't do it because I had formed the habit of persistence. You see, I took these 13 principles, I took them super serious after I started to get into it. Now, I was using this philosophy and I was winning. It was like a game. I really didn't understand what I was doing. But then one day I had to sit down and ask myself, what the heck is happening? And as I started to study this in depth, I realized that all successful people were following all of these principles. Whether they were consciously aware of it or not was another thing. But I never ever met anyone who was very successful that was not also persistent, that followed their path. Now, do you know, this is something that you really want to study and study in depth. Get this, study into it. Do you know, a lot of people talk about luck, lucky breaks. The only break that you're ever going to be able to depend upon is the one you give yourself. There's no such thing as a lucky break. Somebody asked Hill about that one time. He suggested that he got a lucky break with Carnegie. He said it was no lucky break that took 25 years of in-depth research without being paid, without, the struggles that he had. And I guess when somebody looked at him and thought it was a lucky break, he probably thought they obviously really don't know what they're talking about. There isn't any such thing as luck. There's focus, there's goals, there's dreams, and there's principles that you have to follow if you're going to win. People talk about being in the right place at the right time. You got to be aware that you're in the right place at the right time. And then you've got to follow all these principles. You've got to incorporate them into your life. And persistence is an absolute prerequisite. He said, without it, none of the others really matter because you're not going to keep on going. So forget the idea of the lucky break. Create one for yourself. That's how you're going to get the breaks. Think of the people you know who are always struggling. Everyone's surrounded by them. What are they missing? First of all, they're missing a target. They don't know where they're going. They're buffered here and there just by whatever's going on. Conditions and circumstance control their life. They start and they stop. There's no such thing as persistence. But we have to back up. You see, when you start thinking about this quality that he's talking here, his 8th principle, you're talking about something that is the outgrowth of something else. It starts out with a want. You've got to really want it. And if you know how to get it, you don't need persistence. There's no growth to that. It's got to be something you want, and you turn the want into a desire. That desire is fueled by faith. You don't wonder if it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. You just don't know how it's going to happen. And when you've got all those qualities and you've got them all blended together, see, all these 13 principles, you don't have a difficult time talking about one without bringing the other in. It's because the whole universe operates by law and there is only one power. And all the laws jive in together. They meld together just like the colors of a rainbow. So you've got to really study these principles and take a look at them and understand they're all required. You can't grab one or two and say, I'm going to make it on this. It doesn't happen that way. And so when you see a person, they're starting and they're stopping and they're going so far and they hit a block on the road and they get discouraged and quit, they're missing some part of the puzzle. They're not going after what they want. They haven't got the desire. They don't have the faith, so they're not going to develop their persistence. When you have this persistence, you're going to keep going come hell or high water. Nothing is going to stop you. Absolutely nothing. You'll see this in all the lives of people that have accomplished something. Study the Wright brothers. I've studied them. Study Sir Edmund Hillary. I had the good fortune of working with him on 3 or 4 different occasions. The only difference I could see in him than anybody else was his size. He's a big man, but he was persistent. He was going to get to the top of Mount Everest. He didn't get there the first time. He was a beekeeper from Auckland, New Zealand. He went in 1951. He didn't make it. He failed. He went in 1952. He failed again. Everybody thought he was crazy going back because prior to that, anybody that really tried it, they either failed or died trying. But in 1953, he and Tenzing Norgay stood right on top of the world. Do you know there's been 1,000 people do it since then? But he was the first. Without persistence, no one does it. It's in everyone, every person that's ever succeeded. Study Edison. Only 3 years of schooling, just 3 years of schooling. And look what he accomplished. He was persistent. It's been estimated that he tried to build a light 3,000 different times. And he said he didn't see those as failures. He said there was 3,000 steps to creating the incandescent light. But it was persistence that kept him going. See, he had the dream in his mind, he had the vision, and he had fallen in love with it. That is absolutely essential. If you're going to develop persistence into a habit, you've got to make sure that you've got the want. You've got to really want whatever it is. You do not have to know how to get it. You've got to turn it into a desire. You've got to feel it beating inside. And then you're going to develop the persistence. And you're going to find that it's going to happen. One day you're going to look and you're going to realize you've reached the goal. You know, a funny thing about it, sometimes you get into such a habit of working towards the goal, sometimes you're past it before you even realize it. And the goal is something you see in retrospect. You actually did it. But persistence is essential. It's like Hill said right in the beginning. He said there may be no heroic connotation to the word, but the quality is to the character of the human, like what carbon is to steel. Make certain that you develop persistence into a habit, but it'll only become a habit if you've got the others all lined up. Every failure in life carries with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. There's something good in everything. Nothing's all good, nothing's all bad. Everything just is. It's what we make it. And every time you stumble, there's something good in it. I can share something with you. I wrote a book a number of years ago, You Were Born Rich. A lot of people laughed at the title, and they said, well, you were born rich, were you? The truth is everyone's born rich. Most people are just a little short of money. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability within us. When I wrote the book, I wrote the entire thing by hand. And paper swells when it gets old. I had a file that had to be that thick. And I had just finished the book. I had the entire thing finished. I didn't have my name, I didn't have my address, my phone number, nothing on it. And I left the whole file in the back of a cab. I couldn't tell you the color of the cab, the name of the cab, nothing. And my wife said, why aren't you upset? I said, it's so terrible, it's going to be great. I said, the book mustn't have been any good. So I wrote it all over again. I started all over. And I really believed that everything happens for a reason. And that was so bad, I thought it has to be really good. If it's real bad, it's real good. If it's a little bad, it's a little good. This was terrible. So I rewrote it. That book has sold millions of copies. It's been translated into I don't know how many different languages all over the world. It's helped build our business. I could tell you a dozen stories like this. I've lost everything I had, everything I've had, 2 or 3 times. I just got up and kept on going. And at times I was wondering why I kept on going, and I didn't understand. I was just persistently going where I wanted to go. I wanted to build a company that operated all over the world. I didn't know how to do it. I had no idea how to. I didn't have the resources to do it. So I had to get out, I had to find those resources, and I had to keep on going. And the price I had to pay was you had to lose everything a couple of times. And I did. I lost everything a couple of times. But I started all over again. I remember my brother one time saying that he never saw anyone with such tunnel vision as I had. He said, you can't seem to take your eye off the target. it doesn't really matter what happens. And I got thinking about it, and I thought, he's right. But as I go back now and I study and really look at these 13 principles in retrospect over my life, because I've been at this now for 57 years, which is a pretty long time. And I get thinking about it, without these qualities ingrained right inside of me, I would never have kept on going. And you're not going to keep on going if you don't ingrain them within you. Now, when we ingrain something, we turn it into a habit. Persistence is one of the most important habits. Now, I can't say it's more important than all the others, but at times it seems like it's more important. I guess at certain times in your life, each one would be more important than another. But I do know this. It's kept me going when everything looked dark. It kept me going when everything told me to quit. I remember one time we had a brilliant idea. We were going to rent a ship, and we were going to take people out, sell a seminar on a ship. We'd bring on different speakers. And we did, and it was fairly successful. So we thought we should do it again. The next year we got a bigger ship. It didn't work out too well. We lost $2 million on that. And somebody said, "Why isn't it bothering you?" I said, "I don't know. It just isn't. We just lost, that's it." And I think when you get these qualities inside of you, you treat winning and losing exactly the same. There's steps that you have to take to get to where you're going. It seems rather strange at times. In fact, it seems at times like you're right out of your mind. But I think that's happened with everyone that's ever accomplished anything. I think it happened with the Wright brothers. It sure happened with Edison. Can you imagine Edison's neighbors? What the heck is he doing? Why doesn't he get a job? He's down there in his basement playing. I'm telling you, I'd divorce him if I was married to him. Or how about the Wright brothers? Do you know their father was a bishop in some Reformed church? He told them they were going to burn in hell for suggesting that they could fly. Nobody had ever done it. Everybody must have thought they were out of their mind. Study anyone that has ever accomplished anything. Study Napoleon Hill's life. That's an interesting one to study. And you'll wonder what kept him going. It was all these principles. And that's the composite of the thinking of 500 people that he studied, some of the most successful of his day. That's what you've got here. That's what you're incorporating into your thinking, into your plans for building your life. I think you're on a good track.
Persistence is the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. Without persistence, you will be defeated, even before you start. With persistence, you will win. Get out your notebook. Write persistence in capitals at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle of persistence in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now. But if you're going to mastermind, you've got to get people that are in harmony. And when you come together, it's like you're bringing all this energy together. Plans are inert and useless without sufficient power to translate them into action. The mastermind may be defined as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. Andrew Carnegie pointed out that the accumulation of great fortunes calls for power, and power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. He also said the person who accumulates the fortune doesn't have to have the knowledge. Well, Napoleon Hill found that if you analyze the record of anyone who had accumulated great fortune, or many who have accumulated modest fortunes, they've either consciously or unconsciously employed the mastermind formula. He said great power can be acquired through no other principle. Now think about that for a moment. Masterminding.
It's the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people to the attainment of a definite purpose. But if you're going to mastermind, you've got to get people that are in harmony. And they've all got to be focused on that one purpose. This is vitally important. This isn't a brainstorming group. This isn't a brainstorming idea. This is a group of people who have all come together to work towards one specific end. Now, Carnegie said he knew nothing about the manufacturing or marketing of steel, and he said he had no desire to learn anything about it. And yet that's where he earned his fortune. But he earned his fortune because he got people who understood what he didn't understand. He got people that had the knowledge that he needed to accomplish the end he wanted to accomplish. He did not have to have the knowledge that's required for the accumulation of the fortune. He could get that through the aid of his mastermind group. Now, masterminding is a very important part of All Hill's work. And it's something that's used by a few people today, but it's not generally used. Now, I have been using masterminding for a long, long time. And I have 2 or 3 mastermind groups that I work with. Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. And I don't meet them all the time. Now, he recommends that if you have your mastermind group, you should meet a couple of times a week. That's not convenient for everybody. But you do want to meet on some kind of a regular basis. And when you come together, it's like you're bringing all this energy together. It's like bringing a group of batteries together. Each battery has power, but you put them all together, it's got a lot more power. People open the trunk of their car and they have these jumper cables and they hook up one battery to another and bang, the car's going. They get the energy from someone else to get their car started. Well, you know, in a mastermind group, you get the energy from other people. You can get the energy from a group to really surge ahead with an idea, to move on to a much higher frequency, to bring in a lot better ideas and bigger ideas. Now, Hill recommended that when you start a mastermind meeting, there's certain principles that are followed. Let me share these principles with you. These are mastermind principles. You begin every mastermind meeting by reading these mastermind principles. Each person reads these out loud, one at a time. Each one has meaning. They start by, I release. I release myself to the mastermind because I am strong when I have others to help me. Now, what do we mean by that? You've got to release your mind to the mastermind. You quit being an individual and you become one of the group. You're in harmony with that group. You become one with the group. So you release yourself to the mastermind. I believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond my own. Well, just a shallow awareness would help you really understand that. You get a group of people together that are all in harmony and they're all focused on the same thing. You're going to have a lot of power that you wouldn't have as an individual. So don't try and go it alone. Get a group of people together that are really interested in helping you get to where you want to go, and you're helping them get to where they want to go. It says, I understand. I will more easily create positive results in my life when I am open to looking at things, at myself, my problems, my opportunities from another's point of view. Well, you know, perception is a great thing. Perception is one of our higher faculties. And when we help other people and they help us, what we're doing is we're shifting our perception. We're looking at things from a totally different perspective. And when we do that, we see things that we may never see had we not done that. So the perspective that you're going to gain in a mastermind goes so far beyond what you can gain on your own. I decide to release my desire totally in trust to the mastermind, and I am open to accepting new possibilities. In other words, the protectionist idea goes out the window. You're not competing, you're creating. And you're making a decision here to turn your idea over to the mastermind.
You're going to expose this beautiful idea you've got, this great idea, this idea that's going to take you to where you want to go. You're going to share it. You're going to lay it right out there for everybody to see. And you're trusting these people. That's why you're doing that. I forgive. I forgive myself for mistakes I have made. I also forgive others who have hurt me in the past so I can move into the future with a clean slate. Now, you might have had words with somebody in the mastermind group last week, maybe last month. They may have heard words with you. You've got to let all that go. You cannot take any of that energy into the mastermind group because that will just spoil everything. There'll be no harmony. There'll be no resonance. You'll be bouncing around on different frequencies. It'd be like turning on 6 different radio stations and trying to make sense out of it. You can't get any sense. Everybody's got to be on the same station, listening to the same music. So anything that was done in the past that hurt yourself or hurt the other person, you've got to forgive it. You let it go. That's why this is one of the principles to start out with. Forgive means to let go of completely, abandon, totally let it go. Then I ask the mastermind to hear what I really want, my goals, my dreams, and my desires. And I hear my mastermind partner supporting me in my fulfillment. Well, it's like sharing the idea. You open yourself up completely. There's nothing hidden. You're transparent. They're transparent. This is the way you create the harmony. And this is how you create the power. When you all come together, that's real power. In fact, Carnegie said that is the only way to create power. There is no other way. And he said the accumulation of great fortunes calls for power. Power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. That's what the mastermind group is doing. They're bringing this together. Not one, not two, but the group. When 2 or more are gathered together, there I am also. You create a third automatically. You create more power. I accept. I know, relax, accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to my every need. I am grateful knowing this is so. That's an attitude of confidence. You know what you're doing. You know what's happening. And you're going in there expecting the best. You've prepared yourself. Everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's playing the same game. They're letting go. They're becoming transparent. They're moving on to the same frequency. It's like you're turning everybody onto the same station. Everybody's listening to the same music, and things start to click. That's when you create the power and things gel. Then there's a dedication and covenant. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that the mastermind shall supply me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a success-filled and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to God, to my fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the highest example for others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will. I go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. Now, what is God's will? A lot of people ask that. God's will is greater good. God is always for expansion and fuller expression. Spirit's always for expansion and fuller expression. God's will is greater good. That's what the mastermind is doing. It's creating greater good. I've created a couple of companies with people through masterminding, and they've been very successful, earned a lot of money. We've had a lot of fun, and we helped a lot of people. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened because a group of us came together with an understanding that Carnegie passed down to everyone. That was one of Carnegie's basic concepts. In fact, that was the foundation of all of Carnegie's success. And he'd be quick to say that. In fact, he did say that. He made that very clear to Napoleon Hill. And so Napoleon Hill, he created his mastermind. You'll see pictures of him with Harvey Firestone, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison. There's pictures of him today. You see that. They came together. He did not create this philosophy by accident. He didn't put all this wonderful information together in such an orderly, magnificent manner by accident. It was done through the power of the mastermind. It was done through help. They worked together. They all came together. Anything of any consequence that's ever been accomplished has been accomplished through the aid of a mastermind group. They may not have called it that. It's like he said, every person who has accumulated great fortune or a modest fortune have either consciously or unconsciously employed the mastermind principle. Are you using it? Now, how do you start one? Well, you start one by picking one person. You go and ask that person if they'd like to mastermind with you. You may have to explain what it is. The person may say yes, and they may say no. If they say no, you want to feel very fortunate that they've openly said, no, that's not something I want to participate in. If they say yes, then you get together. And the first meeting, you're going to know whether you can get in sync or not. You read those principles. You ask, can we adhere to these? Can we adhere to these while we're in this meeting? And it'll either be a yay or a nay. If it's a nay, it isn't going to work. If it's a yay, it's going to work. Now, when you want to add somebody to that mastermind group, you just don't ad hoc go out and ask someone. As a matter of fact, if you and I were in a mastermind, the two of us, and you came to me and you said, you know, I've got this woman or this man that I would really like to invite into our mastermind. You wouldn't ask them until you asked me if you could invite them. And I wouldn't say yes or no until I got into their company and I asked myself, am I in harmony with their energy? Or is their energy antagonistic to mine, or is mine to them? And I may come back and I say, no, I don't think so. I don't have to tell you why, because I may not know why. The why would be we're just not in sync. We're not on the same frequency. Where the other person might be. Now, could you be in sync with me but not with the other person? Yes, you could. It works that way. Or I might say, yeah, I think they'd be a good member. And then we invite them. Now we may have 3 members, but the same process goes. If any one of us want to invite someone, and we're probably looking for someone, because you want to build a nice mastermind. I don't think you should have more than 8. It gets a little unwieldy, but you can do it with 2. But if there's 3, the same process would be involved. Someone would come, say to the other 2, I've met this man, I think it would be good to be in our mastermind. Well, then the other 2 would have to get into that person's energy, get into their company, and they would come back and they'd say yes, or they would say no. One might say yes, one would say no, then they wouldn't be in. See, there's got to be complete agreement. There's got to be complete harmony. If there isn't harmony, it isn't going to work. It's like getting on the same frequency. Everything operates on frequencies. Your body's functioning on a frequency. It'll move in and out of different frequencies, but that's what it is. And when we stop and think of the frequency we're operating on, we describe that by a feeling. You feel really phenomenal. You're in a very high frequency of thought, and you can take yourself there. You can take yourself there at will. Well, we can do that in the mastermind group, and we can do it so successfully. Now, keep in mind, we've pointed out on a number of these principles that nothing is created or destroyed. Nothing. All the knowledge there ever was or there ever will be is 100%, evenly present in all places at the same time. All the power there ever will be or ever hopes to be is evenly present in all places at the same time. Nothing is created or destroyed. It's such a huge idea to entertain. You and I have the ability to tap into this universal energy and build anything we want. Now, when we do it in a mastermind group, in a group of people that have come together in harmony, you've got phenomenal power. And that's really what you're doing. As a group, you're diving into this sea of wonder. And you're building. And you're all in tune. And so you're picking up energy. And when the group of you come together, everybody moves up. Not just one of you. You all move ahead. You move on to a much higher frequency. Now, you've been aware of this happening, whether it was an organized mastermind group or not. When you come together with another person or a small group of people, and you're really in sync, you're just in sync, and you're really working on something, you start to feel so good. Feeling, conscious awareness of vibration. You're moving on to a higher vibration. That's the purpose of the mastermind group. So you come in and you expose your idea. Then you've got this entire group going to universal intelligence, saying, give us what we need. And because of the high vibration you're in, the attraction becomes awesome. You're sending that out into the universe is sending it all back. Its action, reaction is equal and opposite. You put high energy out, you're going to get high energy back. That's where creation starts. This is how we become super creative. And this is how an ordinary individual can achieve extraordinary results. Why did a guy like myself, with no formal education, 2 months high school, a bad work record, not only broke, in debt, a year later, I was earning $15,000 a month. I had a goal, you see, when I was first given these principles, of earning $25,000. And because I kept focused on it, I was prepared to do anything honest. Didn't matter what it was. Somebody said there's good money cleaning floors. So I got myself a bucket and a mop and a floor machine, and I got an office to clean. Then I got another one, and then another one. I didn't run those by myself. I didn't build those by myself. It was a group of us. It was a mastermind group. We were all in sync. We were all excited about this. We didn't realize that's what we were doing. We were using this principle. But he said, anyone who creates a fortune, a great one or a modest one, has unconsciously or consciously. We did it unconsciously. It doesn't matter whether you're conscious of doing it or unconscious. If you're doing it, you're going to win. Many of the most successful people are doing this. They don't even understand what they're doing. But when they gain an understanding, then they're conscious competence. Prior to that, they're unconscious competence. When a person becomes a conscious competent, they become many times more powerful because they're consciously aware of what they're doing. So they deliberately start to do the right thing. I want you to become a conscious competent insofar as masterminding is concerned. If a poor kid with no formal education and a bad work record can earn $1 million in washing floors in 7 different cities in 3 different countries, I'm quite certain you can accomplish anything you can think of. It's the understanding of the masterminding and the application of the masterminding that gives you the power. And he told you, you need the power. You don't need the knowledge, you need the power. That's the beautiful part. Other members in the group can have the knowledge. Remember what I quoted? The accumulation of great fortunes calls for power. Power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. But that knowledge doesn't have to be in the possession of the person who accumulates the fortune. Get the mastermind group. Brilliant group of them. All come together. Expose your idea. Get people that are in harmony. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to give. Willingly give, graciously receive. They're basic tenets in the masterminding. You willingly give, you graciously receive. You get everybody focused on that star. You get everybody together. They join together. It's like hooking the batteries up. And then away you go. Dive right into universal intelligence with your questions and the answers. You know that sound on your computer? The email goes out. That's the way it comes in. And it just flies into you. Is there a law of attraction? There sure is. It's a secondary law. The primary law is the law of vibration. But you're getting yourself into such a beautiful vibration, on such a magnificent frequency, that that's all you can attract. And you do it through the formation of a mastermind group. Study this. Dig into it. Really understand it. But apply it. Reading it isn't going to do it. Talking about it isn't going to do it. You got to get in there. You got to follow these principles and make certain everybody reads every one out loud. You might discuss each one prior to reading them. What does this really mean? Am I prepared to do this? And you go through it with each member. When they say yes, everyone, you got power. You got power on your side. You've all come together. And there's something there that you can create no other way. Now, they were brilliant people. He'll study this his entire adult life, from the time he was in his early 20s until he died in 1970. He was well up in years. All his life he studied this, and he's sharing it with us. The best thinking of some of the best thinkers. I think it would be wise for us to make certain we do form a mastermind. We do follow the rules. We create the power, and we go where we really want to go. But you see, like with persistence, like desire, like all these other principles, it's got to be for something you really want. You've got to really want it. Want to sit quietly and say, what do I really want? What do I love doing? You see, I think it's important that we wake up in the morning and we know we're going to spend our day doing what we absolutely love to do. You're not going to put everything into something you don't love. And when it comes to your mind of what you really want, you won't know how to do it. But when you understand these principles, you know the way is here. And you know if you ask, you will receive. Seek and you'll find. It's good advice. And when you do it with the mastermind, it's not only good advice, it's powerful advice. Because there's no other way of creating great power. Now, when Carnegie said that, he meant it. When Hill passed that on, he meant it. He didn't just go by Carnegie's word. He went by the word of the 500 super successful people that he studied. And they all agreed on that one point. They might have disagreed in everything else, but they did agree. If you want power and you're going to need it, that's how you get it. Mastermind.
Anyone can wish for riches, and most people do. But only a few know that a definite plan plus a burning desire are the only dependable means of accumulating wealth. Part of that plan must include a mastermind group. Get out your notebook. Write Power of the Mastermind in capitals at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
It's probably the strongest urge that you have. The sex urge is your creative urge. That's where your creative energy comes from.
The meaning of the word transmute is, in simple language, the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another.
The one principle that I'm asked questions on most often, I think, is the mystery of sex transmutation. And I think it's just the word sex that caused people to want to ask questions on it. A bit of a mystery to it. Everybody understands sex in one way. And they think, how could that fit in a book like this? Sex transmutation. I mean, what is that all about? Well, it's an interesting question. It's probably the strongest urge that you have. You see, we have urges. You'll find some people have a subnormal urge. Someone else will have an abnormal urge, and someone will have a normal urge. Like you have self-preservation is an urge, the urge of self-preservation. Some people have a subnormal self-preservation urge. You'll find they become daredevils, you know. Other people have abnormal. They wander around, they don't want anybody to get close to them, wearing masks, gloves. Another person will have a normal. Well, the sex urge is your creative urge. That's where your creative energy comes from. And the sex energy is the highest vibration there is. It causes people to move onto a very high frequency. Napoleon Hill points out that many of the super successful, if you study them, most of them never became very successful until maybe their 40s or possibly even early 50s. And he said, if you study their lives, they directed most of that sex energy into sexual activity. But then at some point, they transmuted it into a creative, productive type energy. Because that's what we do. I remember when I was probably in my late 20s, I was in business. I thought my sex life was going right down the tubes. And it was because I was all business. All my energy was going into my business. It was day and night. That's all I thought of. I never thought of anything else. I'd even forget to eat. It's an extremely powerful vibration that we move into. And you're either directing it one way or another. Now, a person that's really in control of themselves, and we talk about that a lot in organized planning, self-analysis, and we really have to take control of ourselves if we're going to win, That's something we really want to address. We don't want to go all one way, or don't want to go all the other way. We want to bring some balance into our life. And we've got the ability to do that. And we can be very successful in all areas, but only if we're directing the energy. And that urge that we've got, that sex urge, that creative urge, it is very, very powerful. And it'll enable us to do phenomenal work because it moves us onto such a ridiculously high vibration. And when you move into that very high vibration, that's where some of the greatest ideas come from. So this is something you want to study. You want to be aware of how you're feeling. You want to be aware of what's going on inside. And as you study this and you really start to understand it, you start to understand that it is an urge. It's in the subjective mind, and it'll come into your conscious mind, and it starts to control you. You've got a gregarious urge. That's why we live in cities. We get together in groups. We don't be off by ourselves like hermits somewhere. These urges are powerful, but the most powerful one is the sex urge. And we want to get in charge and start to control it the proper way. It's this sex urge or creative urge where genius comes from. We've all got genius within us. We've got to put ourselves in that vibration. He talks about Dr. Gates going to his personal communication room. He turned out all the lights, put himself in a very relaxed state, and permit himself to move into that frequency. And the ideas would flood into his mind. It was the same method that Edison used for his ideas. All great work is done when people are on a very high frequency. And it's this energy that does that. And we can keep it balanced. That doesn't mean you have sex, or you have the creative production of things. That's not the way it is. You can have both, and you can move in both directions. So you want to take and direct it the way you want it to go. And we found that individuals that will put themselves in a very relaxed, quiet state, and then permit that energy to really soar within them, that's where they move into a genius vibration. See, genius lies within us all. There's perfection in every one of us. It's the spiritual essence of who we are, and spirit's always for expansion and forward expression. This is how we move it to a high level. And it's not that you make it go there, you let it go there. You let yourself move into that frequency. And as you do, great things happen. Like there's all kinds of creative ventures that you can be involved in. There's creative solutions to problems or challenges that you may face in your business. There's opportunities that are attached to what you're doing now, extensions of what you're doing now. Where do they come? How do they come? They come by permitting this energy to move to a very high frequency, take us there, and really enjoy staying there and leaving ourselves open for these creative genius ideas to fly into our mind. See, the problem I think most people have is they think she can, but I can't, or he can, but I can't. They have something going for them that I don't have. Every person has the same thing going for them. It's just that one person learns how to utilize their powers and another person does not. So it all moves into a matter of awareness. It all moves into a matter of education. And he points that out. And he points out that education is really bringing out what we've got within. And the sex urge is the highest urge. It's the highest function. And that's where the great creative ideas come, when we permit that urge to soar in our consciousness and take us and show us what we can do, because that's how it comes. It comes in quiet moments in your mind. The desire or urge for sexual expression is natural and inborn. It should not be suppressed or eliminated. Instead, it should be given an additional beneficial outlet. Sex transmutation is redirecting the mind from thoughts of physical expression to thoughts of another creative effort. According to Hill, doing this has the potential to transform mediocrity into genius. And that's what sexual energy or desire has to do with getting rich and manifesting your dreams. Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. When driven by this desire, people develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times.
Get out your notebook. Write the mystery of sex transmutation at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
When you understand the subconscious mind, everything will begin to change because you're going to start to use it properly.
The subconscious mind consists of a field of consciousness in which every impulse of thought that reaches the objective mind through any of the five senses is classified and recorded, and from which thoughts may be recalled or withdrawn as letters may be taken from a filing cabinet.
The Power of the Subconscious Mind. That's a book written by Dr. Joseph Murphy. And I honestly believe any library is incomplete if it doesn't have that book. It's one of the best books on the subconscious mind I ever read. But you know, even after reading it, and you gather a lot of information, an awful lot of people do not understand it. It's been said by countless authors. If you go to the actuarial department of any insurance company, they'll tell you very small percentage of the population end up financially well off. Less than 5%. Think. 90% of our population are struggling all the way through life. And there's no need of it. When you understand the subconscious mind, everything will begin to change because you're going to start to use it properly. Most people are not using it properly. They are using it, everyone uses it, but if you don't use it right, you're toast. It's all over. When you do use it properly, I'm going to tell you, you're going to stand out like a giraffe in a herd of field mice. You're going to be such a winner. You see, the subconscious mind is in every molecule of your being. Think about that. And you, the conscious part of you, your conscious mind dictates what you're going to turn over to it. There's a critical part you want to understand about the mind. First of all, the conscious mind can only entertain one idea at a time. Try and entertain two, you got confusion. All ideas must come from the conscious to get to the subconscious. You cannot go to the subconscious mind any other way but through the conscious mind. So you can't be entertaining positive and negative emotions at the same time. It's one or the other. Make certain you make the right choice, because nothing gets to the subconscious mind without passing your approval. Now, you may give it approval unconsciously. Most people do. That's where the paradigm comes into play. The paradigm, you remember, I talked about it a number of times. The paradigm is that program that's in our subconscious mind that has been put there by someone else, and it's controlling our life. Almost all of our behavior has been controlled by our paradigm. All of our habitual behavior is controlled by our paradigm. Here's another beautiful truth. There are no toll gates between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. And that's what you're dealing with when you're talking about the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious mind is infinite intelligence. That's where everything is. The conscious mind can go there free. Free will. You've heard free will and predestination? There you are. The free will comes from your choice. The predestination, when you put it in, that's it. The subconscious will take it and immediately begin to move it into form. Do you know the manner by which you work with your subconscious mind is very similar to radios, the way a radio works, the vibrations of radio. Do you know right now there's music playing in the room you're in? You may not hear it, but it's there. It's being broadcast in by a radio station. But your ears are not functioning on the frequency that the radio station is broadcasting on. Think about it. What happens is you turn your radio on, they pick up that vibration, they speed it up, and it put it out on the frequency your ears are operating on. Well, what we want to do is understand our mind works exactly the same way. It works through vibration. It works on frequencies. And what we want to do is move ourselves onto a higher frequency, and we can do that through the proper choice of thoughts and then turning it over to the infinite mind, to infinite intelligence, which is the subconscious, which is in every cell of your being. And like that, you'll move on to a higher frequency of thought. You want to get up where the high octane energy is there. The sound is crisper. The feeling's better. Lots of prosperity. Quit struggling. Move on up where you belong, highest form of existence. I want you to really think about your life. Look at the various aspects of your life. Look at the financial aspect of your life. How about time? Most people will tell you they don't have the time and they don't have the money to do the things they really want to do. I have people look at programs that we create that would literally liberate them, would give them the life they want. They say they don't have the time to watch it and they don't have the funds to pay for it. The truth is they're going to spend the time and the money anyway. And what are they spending it on? They're spending it on the continuous expression of a paradigm that was built by someone else that's controlling their life. They're not creating the relationships they want. They're not living in the healthy body that they want. They don't take the vacations they want or buy the homes they want or the cars they want. Part of the paradigm is that we should save. So people are working in jobs that pay a small amount of money and they're squirreling a little bit of that away to save, thinking maybe they'll invest. They never really make it. They don't really understand that through the proper use of their subconscious mind, they could set up multiple sources of income. They could be earning money while they're sleeping. May sound strange, but you could actually earn more money when you're sleeping than you would spend when you're awake. See, most of these ideas are just so absurd to the average mind. You know why? Because these ideas I'm giving you are not part of the paradigm. The paradigm, remember, it's like any program that you put in your computer, you put it in your biocomputer. It came with you as standard equipment at birth through genetic conditioning, just moving down through the genes. I've already pointed out that we're the confluence of a genetic pool that goes back for many generations. And much of what we bought into, that we're a part of, is ridiculous. You see, you have within you all the power that you'll ever need to do anything that you can imagine. Now that's a pretty big statement, but it's the truth. And all the great books and all the great teachers have taught us that. So what do we want to know about the subconscious mind? Well, it is totally deductive. It's amoral. It can only accept, it cannot reject. It will take anything you give to it. It's like the earth. But whatever you give to it, it will return to you, because that's the way it works. It has no ability to reject anything. It accepts everything. It doesn't differentiate between the good or the bad. It doesn't differentiate between what's big and what's small. So if you're looking at something you're thinking, oh, that's expensive, that's the way it is. If you're looking at something and say, that would be a great buy, that's the way it is. If you're looking at something and you say, that'd be really hard to do, that's the way it'll be. If you're looking at something and say, I could do that, that's the way it'll be. Why is it that we look at things we don't know how to do and say it'd be hard to do? Do you think it'd be hard to learn Chinese if you were born in an English home? Most English-speaking people would say yes. Little Chinese girls and boys don't think it's hard at all. They just up and do it and become very fluent. You see, it's what we turn over to our subconscious mind. It's that inner talk. It's the thoughts that we're thinking. That's what's creating our reality. Now think about this for a moment. You have a power within you. It's in every molecule of your being that's totally subjective. If you're a psych major, you'd say it's totally deductive. Call it whatever you want. It will accept anything you give to it, and it accepts it as real. It could be so far from your reality that it would be ridiculous. It'll turn it into reality for you. How about the image that you're holding of yourself? How about the self-talk about, can I do this or can I do that? You know, I knew an awful lot of this material. I'd studied it for years. And I'd sit down and explain it to you one-on-one. But I couldn't stand up in a group and explain it. I was very shy. Part of my paradigm. And one day I was in a meeting in the O'Hare Hyatt Hotel. Bill Gove, who was one of the greatest speakers in the world, he's gone now, God bless him, he was a great guy. He was speaking to an audience of 1,000 people. There was an aisle down the center, there'd be 500 people here and about 500 over here. I was standing at the back watching him. He was such a professional. He was He waltzed that audience all over the place in the palm of his hand. And he was standing holding a handheld mic, and he was just by the front corner of this bank of people. And he had his hand up, and he's saying, if I want to be free, I've got to be me. Not the me I think you think I should be. Not the me I think my wife thinks I should be. Not the me I think my kids think I should be. If I want to be free, I've got to be me. And I'm watching, and I thought, this guy's so good. If only I could do that. But immediately, I knew I couldn't. Now let me digress. Earl Nightingale made a recording on the magic word, attitude. I probably listened to that 1,000 times. And I'm not exaggerating. I still listen to it on a record. And then he said, now right here we come to a rather strange fact. We tend to minimize the things we can do, the goals we can accomplish, and for some equally strange reason, we think other people can do things that we cannot. He said, I want you to understand that's not true, that you have deep reservoirs of talent and ability within you that you can bring to the surface. Now let's go back to Bill Gove. Saying, if I want to be free, and I'm watching and I'm thinking, the guy is so good. And all of a sudden, bang, that record started to play in my head. I could hear Earl saying, now right here, we come to a rather strange fact. We tend to minimize the things. I thought, that's what I'm doing. Now, if you played that and said, did you understand that? I'd say, of course I understood it. I listened to it 1,000 times. I didn't understand it at all. It was just a voice saying something. I didn't relate to it. I thought, that's what he means. If Gove can do it, Bob can do it. So I not only made up my mind I would learn to speak in public, I was going to get him to teach me, and I didn't even know him. Bill Gove and I became great friends. As a matter of fact, the last speech he gave at one of the programs I was running. He was a phenomenal teacher. Now here's another interesting part of that. I don't speak anything like Bill Gove spoke, but he taught me to speak. What he really taught me was how to feel comfortable in front of an audience. I've been in front of an audience, 20,000 people, 20 people. One's the same as the next to me, because I'm always just talking to you, just one person. But you see, I'd been feeding my subconscious mind, I couldn't speak in public. The truth is I could. It was what I was feeding my subconscious mind. And because that's what I was feeding my subconscious mind, that was my results. I'm going to tell you something. If you take a look at your results, take a look at all the results in your life, they're nothing but an expression of some idea, some belief pattern that you have put, and you've put it there in your subconscious. Somebody else may put it there, you've left it there. If you analyze your results and analyze the cause is always in the subconscious mind. It may have come down through some genetic pool. It may have been from when you were a child and the way you were raised. They may be responsible for making you who you are, but you are definitely responsible for changing it. You cannot give that responsibility to anybody else. And if you do, it's all over because they're not going to change it. They can't. Nor can you change anyone else. So thinking you can change somebody else, it's a fool's game. The only person that can change you is you. And if you're going to change you, you start at the cause of the situation. And that's in your own subconscious mind. But understand this, it's in every cell of your being. It'll accept anything you give it. There's no judgment. It can't separate good from bad, big from small, rich from poor. Can't separate hard from easy. It's whatever you give to it. Don't say something's difficult just because you don't know how to do it. Just say, I don't understand how to do that. Then you ask yourself, do I want to do that? If you don't want to, fine, let it go. If you do want to, go to someone that really understands. Listen to them. Listen to understand. Don't listen just to hear. Listen to understand what they're saying. And then start feeding it into your subconscious. You see yourself doing it. Now I keep pointing like this because I see my head as my mind. That's not the way it is, but I see it. Top half of my subconscious or conscious mind, bottom half is my subconscious. So I know it's my conscious mind that's feeding my subconscious mind all the time. Read good information. Read it often. Dwell on it. Sink it into your mind. And understand this. There's a part of you that is totally subjective. It has absolutely no ability to reject, and it's called your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind will accept whatever you give to it and immediately turn it into results. I quoted Andrew Carnegie in a previous recording. I'm going to quote him again because it fits here so well. He said, any idea that is held in the mind, that's emphasized, that's either feared or revered, will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. If you are worried, if you are full of fear, you're giving that over to your subconscious mind. You are actually causing it to happen. Whatever you put in causes the energy to move into form. In all the universe, energy moves into form, through form, and back into form. So important we understand this. But he said any idea that's held in the mind, that's emphasized, that you're focused on, that you keep feeding, that's either feared or revered, will begin at once to clothe itself. Do you know most people live in fear of lack and limitation? They're afraid they're not going to have enough when they get older. They're afraid they're not going to stay healthy. They're afraid the car isn't going to keep running. They're afraid they're going to run out of gas. You can boil it down to some simple thing like running out of gas. If that's what you're afraid of, that's what you're going to attract. It just happens. It's part of the universal laws. It's part of the law of your being. The subconscious mind. Dig into this. Study it. Get into the subject of the subconscious mind in Think and Grow Rich book. Read the chapter every day for a month. Read it with someone. They don't have to be with you. They could be on the other end of the phone. I do this all the time. I read the same thing over and over, sometimes for 6 months. I read the same article over and over for a year with Sandy Gallagher one time, my business partner, because it was such an important subject. I would read 10, 20, 30 lines, then I'll say pass, and she'd pick it up and start reading. And when you read like that with the person, then the person's getting it twice, because they're hearing you and they're watching, they're reading it mentally. Then they read 10 or 20 or 30 lines, and they say pass, and you pick it up. You got to keep reading, pick it up at the same place. See, it's the repetition of reading and imaging that changes the programming. And you can become programmed to the point where you almost automatically reject anything that you don't want in your conscious level, and it never reaches your subconscious mind. So it never has any material effect on your body or your results. It's a very important part of your personality. I can see why it's one of the 13 principles that all wealthy people have used to create wealth, because it's in there where it all starts. That's where the desire is. The desire is the idea you fall in love with. It's inside. It's cooking inside. It's the idea. It just keeps beating in our mind. It's the effort of the unexpressed possibility within, seeking expression without through your action. That's how the subconscious works. It's in every cell of your being. You know, if you really understood it, or when you really start to understand it, you'll probably be much like me. I just kept wandering around saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I didn't even know what I was thinking, but I just felt so grateful that I started to understand this, because I was changing my life, and I could see how I had been feeding my life with bad information for the first 26 years. I never expected anything good. I never thought anything good could happen to me. I really thought other people were different. I thought that, I don't know what I thought. I just thought there wasn't much to me. When I started to realize I was one of the greatest creations on the planet, my whole life started to change. When I started to feed my subconscious mind with that, everything changed. And you know something? It will with you. The power of your subconscious mind. Remember we started? We said it was about you. It's all about you. Get to the point where you can kiss yourself. You're that good. You're worth it. Don't ask if you're worthy of the goal. Ask if the goal is worthy of you, because you're trading your life for whatever it is you're going after. I wouldn't trade my life for a car or for a house, but I trade my life for what I'm going after. Make sure you're making a good trade. It's your life. It's about you.
There is plenty of evidence to support the belief that the subconscious mind is the connecting link between the finite minds of humans and infinite intelligence. Get out your notebook, write subconscious mind in capitals at the top of the page, And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
The brain is really the motor that controls the body. See, the brain on its own does nothing. You've got to be there.
It has been determined that there are from 10 billion to 14 billion nerve cells in the human cerebral cortex, and we know that these are arranged in definite patterns. It is inconceivable that such a network of intricate machinery should be in existence for the sole purpose of carrying on the physical functions incidental to the growth and maintenance of the physical body. Is it not likely that the same system, which gives billions of brain cells the media for communication one with another, provides also the means of communication with other intangible forces?
You know, when you think of the brain, you're thinking of something pretty magnificent. It's reported we've got Albert Einstein's brain in a jar somewhere in New Jersey, but it's not doing anybody any good because Albert's not with it. See, the brain on its own does nothing. You've got to be there. You use your brain. Your brain is actually like an electronic switching station. If you're not feeling good, it's because you're activating some negative cells in your brain. When you're feeling good, you're activating positive cells. You activate them though, and you activate them through thought. And when you think, what you're doing is you're activating brain cells and you're sending positive charges or negative charges of energy off into the universe. Thought waves are cosmic waves that penetrate all time and space. As you study into Napoleon Hill's work on the brain, keep in mind it was done some time ago. He had done a lot of studying of Dr. J.B. Ryan's work down in Duke University. When I first started studying this, I was following Ryan quite a bit. Dr. Ryan was a professor at Duke, and he did a lot of work with mental telepathy and with clairvoyance. Performed a lot of tests. He turned a lot of skeptics into believers. He helped us understand what we could really do with our brain. You know, we know very little about the brain. We're just really beginning to learn something about the brain. We never operated on a live brain until about, 60, 70 years ago. Prior to that, we were operating on the brain from a cadaver. We're just really beginning to get tuned in to how the brain works and how to work with it. We telepathically communicate with other people all the time. You may have a loved one on the other side of the world, and you get a strong feeling one day that you should phone them. And you pick up the phone, and lo and behold, the phone didn't ring, you didn't touch the dial, but they're on the other end. You say, wow, what a coincidence. That's no coincidence. One of you was thinking, and the other picked up that vibration and acted on it. You see, one of you sent out a vibration, it activated the cells in the other person's brain that were in harmony with it, and you acted on it. It's much the same as me hitting send on a phone. If your phone's open, it'll ring. That's the way it works. We tuned in on a frequency and we sent a message. Well, you can do that with your thoughts. When you're not feeling good, what you want to understand is you're activating pictures in your mind that are negative. You're worried, you're creating or activating pictures that are already there that are not very positive. We don't need to do that. When we operate with understanding, we want to realize that we are activating brain cells all the time. When you think, that's exactly what you're doing. Thinking is a function of the mind working in harmony with the brain. And when it's done with understanding, great things can happen. You see, what we do, we put our mind onto a frequency of thought. What we're doing is activating a certain group of cells in our brain. We activate those cells, that enables us to pick up vibrations. You might find yourself sometime with a small group of people, and all of a sudden you start to feel very angry. And you don't know why, but you've got this angry feeling. Someone in the group may be very angry. Although you don't notice it, they're not saying anything, their face doesn't even indicate it, but they're angry about something. You have anger cells in your brain. That vibration they're sending out is activating the anger cells in your brain, and you're moving into an angry vibration. That's telepathic communication. If you're in a restaurant, when people are eating, they're very rarely thinking. They just eat. It's all automatic. It's a habitual action that we're involved in. If they have their back to you, you might visualize, actually see them turning around. You actually visualize them turning around looking at you. You're sending that vibration into their head. They'll start to get uncomfortable, and pretty soon they'll turn around. And you'll see that what you did was actually plant an idea in their mind for them to turn around, and they will actually turn around. You're sending message like that all the time. Do you know, it's not uncommon for salespeople to sit down and make a marvelous presentation of their product or service, and then they're thinking they're not going to buy it. Why would a person do that? Why would a person go to the trouble of making a great presentation and then think they're not going to do it? If the prospect's in a subjective state, that's what they're picking up, and that's what they're going to do. They're not going to do it. When we ask a person to do something, we want to see them doing it, because we are communicating intellectually, we're communicating emotionally, and we're communicating physically all the time. So we're sending messages from our brain to their brain. The brain is the switching station. The brain is the broadcasting station. It's also the receiving station. It's the part of your physical body that will pick up the energy from universal intelligence, translate it into ideas in your consciousness, and help you understand where you're going or what you're doing. We mentioned in the lesson on intuition how we pick it up by feelings. Well, it's the brain that picks it up. That picks up the feeling. When we ask questions of ourselves, what we're doing is asking universal intelligence. So don't see it as something that you're just having trouble with. If it's a question, ask the question. You're asking universal intelligence. Universal intelligence will rush to your aid. It'll give you whatever you ask. It's totally deductive. But you've got to be in harmony with it. You've got to be on that vibration of the good that you want to receive. And your brain will receive it. Every time we think something, we're creating an image. And that image is impregnated into cells in our brain. When we try to remember something, we go back and we're digging around in a little compartment, bang, we get the right brain cells activated, and the picture flies on the screen of the mind. Whenever your senses are affected, it affects the brain. All of nature's creatures respond to outside stimuli. When we are communicating with another person, we're communicating using words. Don't use buzzwords that are familiar just or peculiar just to your business or industry. Use words that everyone understands. I one time heard where President John Kennedy had his speeches prepared so a 10-year-old child would understand them. He was an effective communicator. He knew how to communicate with people. You see, words are symbols. Every symbol has a corresponding image. Well, it's the picture in our mind that we're attempting to transfer to the other person's mind, and you do it through brain cells. You get the picture in your mind, and you're thinking it, and you're transmitting it. You use words, you talk, but you're also sending the strong vibration. And that activates cells in their brain, and what you're doing is building pictures and impregnating them into cells in their brain. Now, we've got an infinite number of cells, more than you'll ever use. When there's a problem in the body, it's usually a problem in the brain. There's no such thing as a mental retardation. That is a misnomer. You'll often hear people talk about mentally retarded. There's no such thing. There's only brain damage. When you see a person that has difficulty, it's brain damage. Let's take a person that's had a stroke. The brain is the greediest part of the body when it comes to blood. And there's a lack of blood that goes to a particular part of the brain. Like that, the brain cells die. Now, they may have been the cells that are wired to operate this arm and this leg. And so you'd find these limbs will become lethargic, they'll become useless. But we've also found if we take now and we activate and move that body, we open and close the hand and we move the arm, pretty soon we will educate healthy cells to do what the damaged cells can no longer do. That's a relatively new idea. I think it's called patterning. We're learning so much about health and the relationship of the mind and the brain insofar as the body's concerned. The brain is really the motor that controls this body, but it's the mind that dictates what you're going to do with your brain. So do you see, when people hear the mind, they automatically think of the brain. But the brain is not the mind any more than your hand or your heel is. The body is the body. Mind is the mind. James Allen said, mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind. And evermore he takes the tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys or 1,000 ills. We think in secret, but it comes to pass. Environment is but our looking glass. See, the brain doesn't do it on its own. You work in harmony with the brain. You're a soul. You don't have one, you are one. Nobody's ever seen the mind. So when you think of mind, don't just think of the brain. Think of everything about you is the mind manifest in physical form. The brain, though, is a wonderful tool. You can use it to send out good vibrations, and you can use it to receive great vibrations. But clearly understand this. You do become what you think about, and that is because your thoughts dictate the vibration you're in. The vibration you're in dictates what you're going to do. It also dictates what you're going to attract. I one time heard Earl Nightingale say, when you set your goal and start moving toward it, it'll start moving toward you. And at first I wondered, did he really mean what he said? This was years ago I heard him say that. And as I started to study, I never forgot him saying that. I had such respect for him. He was such a brilliant man. I thought, did he make a mistake? Did he really mean that? As I start to move toward my goal starts to move toward me. No, he did mean it. I just hadn't understood all the implications with the brain, the mind, and the law. You see, when you hold your goal in your mind, it's impregnated into cells in your brain. And when you activate those cells, you put your mind and body into harmony with everything that's required for the manifestation of the goal or the image. So as you move into that vibration and you change the way you behave, you also change what you attract. And so you start to attract to you. It's like you're magnetized. Everything is required for the image to move into form. And it's the action-reaction as they come together that alters the conditions, the circumstance, and the environment in your life. Your brain plays an enormous role, but it's the mind that activates the brain. Understand clearly how the mind operates. Your mind, on a conscious level, can reason inductively or deductively. Your subconscious mind only reasons deductively. Now, the inductive reasoning factor is the part that can choose individual thoughts. And as you choose these individual thoughts, you're impregnating them into a group of cells in your brain. And as you bring them together, you build ideas. And so you get those ideas in your brain. They're pictures. That is what's going to dictate how you're going to live, where you're going to go, how you're going to feel, who you're going to attract, who you're going to be attracted to. There's some people you feel very attracted to. There's others you want to get away from them. Why is that? It's because of the vibration you're in. It's because of the way you think and the way they think. When two people are thinking the same way, they're being attracted together. And when they're not, they're being repelled. So you'll be in a person's presence sometime and you feel very uncomfortable with them. Why? It's because of the way they're thinking. It's because of what's going on in their mind. You see, their brain is sending off these charges of energy and your brain's picking it up. And it's setting up a vibration in you that you don't particularly like. Well, ask yourself where it's coming from. It's probably coming from those people or that person. Get away from them. Now, does that mean that you have to literally get away from them? Not necessarily. Could be a loved one. But you can shut it off. You can shut their energy off. You see, if you're not thinking, your conscious mind's in a totally deductive state. In other words, everything that's going on around goes right into your subconscious and controls the vibration you're in. So you put a white light of protection around yourself, and you guard yourself from the energy coming from those people. There's people that you're going to visit, that you're going to be around. You don't particularly enjoy them, but, something causes you to be in their presence for a while. You want to be very careful. You want to protect yourself from the energy you're picking up from them, because it can do you great damage. Now, you can be right in their physical presence and it won't bother you. But if you leave your mind wide open, they're going to be activating cells in your brain that are not going to put you in a very good vibration. The brain's a wonderful tool. It's a magnificent one. We're only really beginning to start to understand it. We're starting to understand what parts of the brain does this and what parts of the brain does that. But clearly understand, it's only recently, relative to the whole scheme of things, that we're starting to understand it. Never operated on a live brain until, I think Vincent Fay was one of the first neurosurgeons to operate on a live brain. There was another man, Glenn Doman, who was a therapist, and he was fascinated with what Vincent Fay was doing. And Fay befriended him, and he used to let him come in and watch him. Glenn Doman learned a lot, and he started to understand that if there was a problem with a person, it was a brain problem, and it could be corrected. And he began taking children that were really in very bad shape and bringing them right back to normal shape. He began teaching children to read before they could talk. His foundation today does marvelous work. Glenn Doman, great work. He wrote a wonderful book, How to Multiply Your Baby's Intelligence. And it all has to do with the brain. It has to do with how to teach the little child. See, the only thing a child is missing when you're teaching them that the adult has got, the child doesn't have, is the experience of vocabulary. If we would realize that that child is a marvelous mind, just the same as the parent, then we're going to start teaching them different. Instead of goo-goo, dada, we start to teach them something that makes sense. They can comprehend it. They will get it. If you take into consideration, they don't have the experience or the vocabulary that you have. But their mind operates the same way. They have a brain and it operates the same way. We want to start to plant beautiful pictures in their mind, because the pictures they have in their mind of themselves as they grow older is going to dictate the life they have. As we give the child, the small child, beautiful information about themselves, tell them how wonderful they are, the child will believe everything we tell them. Tell them the truth. Tell them how magnificent they are, the great potential that they've got. All of that information is tucked into cells in their brain. As they get a little older and they think of themselves, they're the pictures that keep coming on the screen of the mind. Now that's a lot better than the parents that criticize the child, always chastising the child for doing something wrong. You know, a child that grows up with a lot of criticism grows up very insecure. A child that grows up with a lot of praise grows up very confident. And that is because all this information is tucked into cells in their brain. And when those brain cells are activated, the pictures come on the screen of the mind. And it's the pictures that control the vibration we're in. So when we're thinking of our children, let's really think. Let's telepathically communicate beautiful ideas to them. Until my children were a pretty good age, I used to sit down with them. When they were ready to go to bed, I would lay down, they would lay down, I'd put my hand on them, and I would say positive things to them. Some people say they call that saying prayers at night. Well, I guess you could say that. Prayer is the movement that takes place between spirit and form with and through us. A lot of people think, God help me, on their knees is saying prayers. That's making a noise on your knees. Prayer is the movement that takes place between spirit and form with and through us. And I would put my hand on them, I'd make a physical connection, and I'd have them repeat, I'm so happy that I'll wake up feeling wonderful with a smile on my face. And I would say positive things to them. That's the way all the kids woke up. That's the way they went to bed. That was what was programmed into their mind. Do you know, when my daughter was 16, when Colleen was starting to drive a car, I was very busy. And I wanted to spend more time with her, teaching her how to drive, than I had. So I would take her out for a lesson, but then I would have her at night lay in bed, and I would have her mentally driving the car. I would get her to parallel park, I'd get her to merge onto heavy traffic on a freeway. I'd have her do all these things mentally, and I'd have her go through them all, one after another. And I taught her to do that. Every time I took her out, her driving had improved dramatically. You see, You can mentally do it. And the mind doesn't know the difference. What you're doing is you're educating brain cells to set up an action that's going to give us the result we want. Make certain that you're putting the pictures in your brain of the thing you want. Make certain you're focused on your goal. You're focused on how you can, not why you can. Take a look at the 6 Ghosts of Fear. Take a look at that lesson. Study that lesson. It's about indecision, about worry, about fear. And see the vibration you're putting yourself in just through this wrong choice of thoughts, the activation of the wrong brain cells. See, every brain cell has a positive and negative pole, just as everything is a positive and negative. So you can think of anything and you activate the brain cells, you can act the positive or the negative pole in those brain cells. Why would we be activating the negative? It could be a habit. Can we change it like that? Change it to positive? Absolutely you can. See, there's something good and something bad about everything. And all of that is programmed into every picture. Our brain stores pictures, a zillion of them. Everything you've ever seen, heard, witnessed is programmed into the brain. Make certain that when you're thinking, that you are thinking positive and you're sending positive energy out into the universe. See, when the energy flows into your consciousness, it has no form. It's neither positive or negative. There's a power flows to and through us. And you can actually photograph it leaving the body. But as it flows in, we think. We build pictures. Why would we think of what we don't want? Well, possibly because we're misguided. We're thinking of what we want, but we don't see the resources, we don't see the money to get it, so that instantly causes us to think we can't have it. Let's realize this. All of our present results are the manifestation of what we've been thinking in the past. Do not let present results control your thinking, or you'll create more of the same. You look at the present results, that gives you an indication of how you have been thinking. You think, now if I keep thinking that way, I'm going to get more of the same. You go to your source of supply. It's coming to and through you every second of every day. It never stops. It's continually flowing. It's circulating. Circulation is one of the first laws of the universe. In everything, your blood starts circulating, it's all over. Well, this energy is circulating to and through you. And you're thinking, you're building cells in your brain. And that brain cells send it out, and it's attractive. It's a marvelous tool. It is a switching station, an electronic switching station. But clearly understand this, on its own it does nothing. You have to do it. You have to activate it.
The real leaders of the world always have been people who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity, and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every other form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. Get out your notebook, write the brain in capitals at the top of the page, and then I'm going to use this principle in the following way, and then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.
We're working with a higher side of our own personality, and we do it unconsciously. And intuition is one of the most valuable.
The sixth sense can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
One of the very important success principles that Hill wrote about was the sixth sense. And you know, I'm of the opinion it's not a sense at all. It's a higher faculty that as humans we have. All the other little creatures operate with 5 senses. We do too. We see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Now we've talked about this before in another principle, but it's important we bring it up again because as long as we live in a physical body, correspond with the material world, we're going to use our 5 senses. But if we're going to go on beyond this physical world, if we're going to get into the universal side of our personality,
the spiritual side, the energy side of our personality, we're going to have to use a higher faculty. And we have these higher faculties. We've got perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. Now, intuition is that mental faculty that gives us the ability to tap in to universal intelligence. It gives us the ability to read vibrations of another person. We say this is psychic. A person that uses their intuitive factor is psychic. Well, the truth is everybody's psychic. Psyche is a Greek word for mind. And what we're using is one of our higher faculties of the mind, our intuitive factor. The intuitive factor gives you the ability to pick up the energy from another person or pick up the energy from universal intelligence and then translate it into an intellectual level, into words in our consciousness. In other words, it comes in the form of a feeling. You don't pick up words, you pick up feelings, you pick up vibrations. And that's really what the sixth sense does, as Hill was talking about it, or your intuitive factor does. When you're with another person, you feel their energy. If you're with another person, just like that, you feel there's a mood shift. How do you know there's a mood shift? It's your intuitive factor that's telling you that. You feel them, all of a sudden, they become fairly sad. They may have a smile on their face, but you know something's disturbing them. How do you know that? It's your vibration, or their vibration, and you're picking it up and you're feeling it. One of the most common questions I'm asked in programs that I run is, how do you develop your intuition? Mine is fairly highly developed. It's not an accident that I've decided a long time ago, and I started to develop it. I think most people that work with groups of people all the time are fairly intuitive. I think there's a lot of police officers that are very intuitive, customs agents that are very intuitive. They're dealing with the public and they're looking for something that you just don't see on the surface. So they pick it up and they become very intuitive. Well, you develop it by giving all of your attention to another person. Most of us are very self-conscious. Our energy is inverted. We're thinking of ourselves. Does she like me? Does he like me? Is my tie straight? Is my makeup on right? We go through all this stuff in our mind. What did they think of me? You've got to take your mind off yourself. And you've got to put all your conscious attention on the other person. Now, when you put all your conscious attention on the other person, you start to get into their energy. And when we say get into their energy, their body is energy. Their mind is energy. Everything about them is energy. And it's all vibrating. And it's vibrating on different frequencies. Person on a very high frequency, you're going to get very good energy from them. People on a very low frequency, you're going to get some disturbing energy from them. But you will feel it. And when a person tells you something, you'll know whether it's the truth or not. You often hear when you hear the truth, you'll know it. Well, that's because the truth resonates with the essence of who you are. And it's important we talk about this for a moment. There's music in the room you're in right now. Now, it could be quiet. You don't hear the music, but it's here. There's movies going on. You've got classics. You've got westerns. You've got all kinds of movies. You don't see them, but they're in the room. They're being broadcast in that room, but they're not on the frequency that your ears or eyes are operating on. If you turn on a radio or a TV, those frequencies are picked up, they're sped up, and they're sent out then on a frequency that your ears or eyes are operating on, so you hear the music or you see the movie. Well, it resonates with the receiver. And it's the receiver then that takes it and speeds it up and sends it back out where you can deal with it. When you hear the truth resonates with the essence of who you are. It resonates with that spiritual perfection within you. Well, the truth resonates with that, and it sets up another vibration in the consciousness. It's called knowing. I just know it. If a person's not telling you the truth, you'll wonder, are they telling me the truth? When they are telling you the truth, you'll just know it. You'll feel it. Well, it's your intuitive factor that does that. That's really what happens. It's your intuitive factor that feeds you information. When you ask a question of yourself, what you're doing is asking the universe the question. When you're really thinking and you're trying to figure something out and you're asking questions, you're asking the universe the question. Every question has an answer with it. That's the opposite side of the same thing. Question, answer, in, out, up, down. That's the law of polarity. Every question has an answer. We read where a rhetorical question is a question without an answer. That's a statement, that's not a question. There's no such thing as a question without an answer, any more than there is an up without a down or an in without an out. It's the opposite side of the same thing. So what we want to understand is that when we are really locked into this information, and we start to understand that we are a part of everything, and everything's a part of us. Everything's connected. Nothing is separate. We're all connected. As I've mentioned many times, like the color of a rainbow, every frequency is hooked up to the one above and the one below. One of the things that we want to clearly understand is that what we see here is not really us. I've talked about that. I'm not a body, I have a body. I'm not Bob Proctor, that's my name. Now think of this for a moment. You never hear anyone say M hand or M leg. We say my hand, my leg. These are things we have. You see, we don't have a soul, we are a soul. We are an extension of an infinite power, an expression of. It's very important we understand this. All science and all theology clearly indicate nothing is created or destroyed. Nothing is created. You are living in a physical body. You moved into it, you will move out of it. Unfortunately, we move into them, everybody's joyous. We move out, everybody cries. It's a transition. Now, Napoleon Hill knew this, and he came up with a phenomenal idea where he was going to use his sixth sense, his intuitive factor. He was going to meet with a group of people that he admired, and he was going to let them help him develop his character. So he had his council. He had Emerson and Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, Carnegie. This is a prestigious group of people. And he would meet with them. It was his group of 9. And he would talk to them. And he would get counsel with them. Now they were all gone, but he would get in their energy. And I studied this at first. I thought this is a little far out, but the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about life, and the more I started to understand who I really was and what was going on, I thought that's a good idea. I've used this idea for years and I've taught it. I teach it in a little different way, but it's the same thing. When I have a problem or a challenge, and I'm having a very difficult time with it, one of the first things with problems is identify the problem. So I'll sit down and I'll write it out. And I'll write it out as clear as I possibly can. I write it out clear enough so if someone else would read it, they would understand it. And when I get it written out very clear so that anybody would understand, I put it in the middle of my dining room table. And I sit down and I ask myself, is that problem in me or is it on the paper? And I work until I get it out of me and get it on the paper so I can look at it objectively. And I can use my higher faculties to deal with it. And so I'll do that and I'll keep working until I get it on the paper. I get the problem out of myself. I don't let the problem control me. I'm going to take control of the problem. I'm going to get it out there where I can look at it objectively like a stranger can. Do you know we're the only creature on the planet that's able to do something like that? We can get outside of ourselves and look at ourselves like a stranger can. We can watch the way we're operating, watch what we're doing. We have the ability to do that. Well, I would do this, I do this, not would do it, I do it regularly. And then I'll go and sit at the other end of the table and I'll look at it and I'll say, how would Napoleon Hill deal with this? And I'll mentally let myself get into his energy. And when I do that, things start to come to my mind. Then I'll go and sit at another place on the table. I'll say, how would Earl Nightingale do this? How would he look at it? I spent 5 years working with Earl, right beside him. I got to know him very well, so I got into his energy. And I'll sit and I'll say, how would he handle this? And then I'll go and I'll think of someone else. And so I do this, people that I admire, people I do study. How would Thomas Troward look at this? How would Genevieve Behrend look at this? These are people that I study. They're mentors of mine that have been long gone, but I study them through their writings, through their teachings. And I will pay very close attention And answers come, but they come in the form of a vibration. They come in the form of feeling. Now, if you really understand what you're doing, you'll pay attention to these feelings because the answers are there for you. You'll get the answers from them. You'll hear it in your mind because that's how the mind deals with intuition. It translates it into words, into a conversation in your head. And the conversation can be just as clear as somebody sitting across the table talking to you. Now, if that seems a little far out, don't reject everything just because you reject this. Clearly understand anything we don't understand. We have a tendency to criticize or ridicule. What we should do is really try to understand it. Why would I be telling you this if I didn't know it worked? See, I don't just think it works, I know it works. I gained confidence in it by studying what Napoleon Hill was doing. I thought, it seems like a pretty good idea. So I put a little bit of a twist on it, and I use it with any challenge or problem that I come up with that I seem to have difficulty coming up with an answer. I know the answer's here, and so I may choose to get it through Earl or through Napoleon Hill. But I know I'm going to get it. And I know I'm going to get it in the form of a feeling. I know no one's going to come up with a big sign and say, here's your answer. But it's like a big sign, and you feel it. Your intuitive factor is one of the most beautiful things you've got. I think you remember I quoted Albert Einstein. He said, our intuitive mind is a sacred gift. Our rational mind's an obedient servant. He said, we've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Why? We just don't pass this on. We're not taught this in school. We're taught to pay attention, listen to what the teacher's saying. But we're not taught the higher faculties. We're not taught the laws of the universe. We're not taught that this whole place, everything in the universe, operates in a very exact way. I see the laws as God's modus operandi. It's how everything happens. And as we understand it and get in harmony with the law, everything starts to work beautiful for us. Well, one of the tools you've got to do that is your intuitive factor. You might pay attention to what Napoleon Hill did with his Council of Nine. You might want to develop your own council. I've got a lot of help from mine. You could probably get a lot of help from yours. Well, what we want to grasp is the idea that when we dwell on a question, the answer's there, but we've got to be open to receive the answer. Do you know there was an interesting point come out on an inner circle call? These are people that are into some fairly high learning that I work with. And I do a Q&A every now and then. And this one man said, you know, it's a funny thing, Bob. He said, I've always got a couple of questions, and I think of these questions and I save them for when we get on these calls. But then as I go to ask you the question, he said, I've got the answer, it's there. And I said, have you ever thought of why you've got the answer when you're there with me? You think I've got the answer, so you open up and you're receptive. And because you're receptive, the answer's there. The answer's always been there, but you're not receptive for it. You've got to realize that the answer is there. And it's your intuitive factor that's going to feed that answer to you. You've got to be receptive for it. The intuitive factor is a phenomenal tool. It helps us pick up information and translates it in our mind. We're doing it all the time. It's just we don't understand we're doing it. Stop and think of the number of times you go to pick up your phone to phone somebody and they're on the other end of the line and the phone didn't even ring and you say, wow, what a coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all. That's called thought transference. One person was thinking, the other person was receptive, they received it. It's a form of telepathic communication. This is going on all the time. We're working with a higher side of our own personality, and we do it unconsciously. We can start to do it and consciously do it. You're going to find that all the super successful people make their decisions very fast, change them very slow, if and when they change them at all. We went into that in the decision lesson. Why do they do that? They do that because they just know they're going to make things happen. And they flip onto a higher frequency. And when they're on that higher frequency, they're looking for answers. And the answers are coming. And they're getting them intuitively because they've moved on to a higher frequency of thought. They've moved on to the frequency where the good that they're looking for exists. Nothing's created or destroyed. Everything's already here. And if it's not in one state, it's in another. So what we're really looking for is already here, but we've got to be open and receptive to receive it. We've got to understand that we have this higher faculty called intuition. An intuitive factor is a part of your mind. It's a part of you as a human. You're beyond the animal level. The animals operate with the senses. You've got those, and that's for your physical benefit. But there's a higher side of you. You're a spiritual being. We just live in this physical body. We're not just physical. We're much higher. We've got these higher faculties, and we've got to learn to use them. And intuition is one of the most valuable. So you develop it, that's the question I'm always asking, by taking your focus off yourself and put it on the other person. And when you're with that other person, really listen to them. Feel what they're telling you. You will feel their energy. There's an energy source around them, and you'll actually feel it. And you'll know what they're saying, and sometimes they'll say something, but that's not what they're really telling you. You know that happens at times. The person's telling you one thing on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, they're emotionally involved with something different. In psychiatric circles, they call that a double binding message. Consciously, they're telling you one thing. Subconsciously, they're telling you another thing. So on a conscious level, you're hearing their words, but on a subconscious level, your intuitive factors giving you the opposite answer. And you're getting a double binding answer. And sometimes that causes confusion, and you're not quite sure what you're picking up. Go by your feeling. Feeling is spirit. Feeling never lies. Spirit never expresses itself other than perfectly. And that's what you're dealing with on a subconscious level. Whatever's going on in the heart of the other person, you can pick up, you're going to feel it. And sometimes it might not be that good. They say, I want to help you, when they're really saying, all I'm trying to do is help myself. You'll see this with salespeople frequently. They're telling you they're really interested in helping you. This is really going to help you. All they're thinking of is the commission. And you feel this. There's no sincerity. They're not authentic. There's something missing. How do you know there's something missing? You feel it. It's your intuitive factor that's picking that up. Well, you want to really start paying attention to that. Understand you've got it. Everyone's using it. They're not consciously aware they're using it. It's like I mentioned, if a person's moods shift, if their moods just shift like that, you feel it. That's your intuitive factor. And you're using it all the time. You'll go in the house and somebody will say, what's wrong? You say nothing. The dog knows something's wrong. They feel the energy. We project this to everyone. Everyone projects it to us. Most people don't understand how this is. They don't understand they have this marvelous mental faculty, and so they never use it. I'll walk by people in seminars every day, and I'll analyze them. I'll tell them exactly what they're like. I can tell, like, you are very right brain. There's a right brain side of you. More ideas flying into your head than you can handle. The other person, I'll tell them, you're very left brain. You're very analytical. Very, very stubborn. Very locked into things. Have difficult time changing. You can tell a right brain from a left brain person just by picking up their energy. The right brain's very creative, very free-flowing. The left brain, not so much, pretty analytical. Well, you can feel that about people. It's your intuitive factor that does that. Understand you've got it. Understand you can develop it. It's developed over time. Best way to develop it is with people that you're very close to. A loved one, somebody you're in love with. Or it could be someone that you're very, very involved with in your work, where you work very closely. If you think they're thinking something, ask them and say, yeah, how did you know? Do you know what that is? That's positive feedback. And positive feedback is what you need to develop confidence in your own intuitive factor. I've got tremendous confidence in my own intuition today because I've been working with it for a long time. Somebody can tell me something and I'll know whether it's right or wrong. I'll feel it. I'll know what's going on. I pay more attention to what I feel than what I hear. And that's what you want to train yourself to do. That's what intuition does for you. Intuition deals with feeling, and you feel things from the other person. You're feeling your energy all the time. Make up your mind you're going to develop yours. Start to understand you have it. I don't know if there's books written on it. I haven't found a book written on it. I'm continually asked, how do you develop? You develop it through practice. Take your mind off yourself, put it on the other person. Start to pay attention to what you're feeling. Really listen to them. Let yourself get emotionally involved. And you're going to start developing your intuitive factor. But as long as your energy is inverted, as long as you're focused on yourself, it isn't going to happen. Focus on the other person. Give them all of your attention. That's what you should do anyway when you're with someone. You see, when you really roll this around your mind for a while, you're going to realize that is what the sixth sense is.
The sixth sense is not something that one can take off and put on at will. The ability to use it comes slowly through application of the other principles outlined in this book. Get out your notebook. Write the sixth sense in capitals at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now. Fear stops more people than anything else. That's a bad way to live. If you don't overcome these ghosts of fear, you're probably about as far as you're ever going to go. You know, I began by pointing out that Napoleon Hill said, through all his analysis, all the research that he did over many, many years, he found there was 30 major causes of failure, and there were 13 principles for accumulating a fortune. You could say 13 principles of success if you want. But at the end of the 13 principles, he wrote the 6 ghosts of fear. A lot of people consider that studying that was really the key to being able to execute the 13 principles. Because if you don't handle it, you probably will not enjoy success. You see, fear stops more people than anything else. I want you to think of the number of people that are in a job they don't like, they don't enjoy, they're not doing well, they feel they're underpaid and overworked, but yet they're afraid to quit. I clearly remember many, many years ago, before I ever started studying any of this, I got out of the Navy and I took a course in welding. And I was working for a man who was not a nice person. I had to go from one end of the city to the other to get there. And it was in the winter, and it was heavy, it was snow, it was cold. He treated me terribly. I hated working there. But all the way there, I was afraid I was going to get fired. Isn't it silly? We're doing things we don't like and we don't stop doing them. Why? We're afraid we won't get anything else. That's a bad way to live. Napoleon Hill wrote about it. And he made it very clear, if you don't overcome these ghosts of fear, you're probably about as far as you're ever going to go. When you do overcome these ghosts of fear, it's open highway. It's clear sailing. Now that doesn't necessarily eliminate the fear, but you start to understand what's causing the fear. And so as you start to experience the fear like that, you can correct it, you can eliminate it. And you eliminate it in your mind because that's where it is in the first place. And you eliminate it through understanding. You know, someone said that education is expensive. And I suppose there's good reason for looking at it that way. Many students are leaving school with great debts. There's all kinds of seminars and programs today. They're considered to be, some of them, fairly expensive. The better ones are. I know ours are. But the people that come to them multiply their income. They change their life. You see, what's really expensive is ignorance. And the only way to overcome ignorance is through study. There isn't any other way to do it. Now, I want to run through a series of slides here. And as you look at these slides, you're going to start to understand something that I think has the power to change your life, and certainly has the power to help you understand what Hill was talking about when he talked about the 6 ghosts of fear. Now let's go back to the beginning. Why are we studying these 13 principles in the first place? We're studying it because we want to get something we haven't got. So I want you to think, what do you really want? Because you're the director of your life. That's really what you are. You're deciding which comes in what order. And you can have anything you want. What you have to do is learn to control the flow of the thought energy that flows very freely to and through you, improving everything in your life, and you can. But if you're focused on things that are causing fear, I guarantee it's going to take you down a road you do not want to go down. Now, what I'm going to attempt to do here is show you what happens to a person who does not study and understand this. But as you start to understand what Napoleon Hill was explaining, how indecision, doubt, fear, that is behind the ghosts of fear. And they are ghosts. It's all in our own mind. Understanding, put them in the right slot. So I want you to really think. You want to control the flow. This beautiful power, this creative, unadulterated power is flowing into our consciousness. We can make anything out of what we want. We have a choice. Remember, I mentioned everything operates by law, and I did mention one of the laws was the law of polarity. The law of polarity decrees that everything has an opposite. There's no inside without an upside. You couldn't have an up without a down or a hot without a cold. Now, why would a person choose the negative? They choose it because they're programmed to choose it. They were raised with those ideas. They live in ignorance of the truth of who they really are and what they are. I'm a spiritual being. And I want to be aware of that. I want to have that knowledge very clearly sitting in the front of my mind. Now, if I live in ignorance, I'm going to show you what will happen. This power is flowing into our conscious mind, and we start thinking of what we want, but we don't see the resources to get it, so we instantly start to doubt. We make wrong decisions. We make no decision. What did Napoleon Hill say? It was indecision and doubt. And fear. But you see, doubt, worry, indecision, they're all intellectual exercises. They're very destructive. It's on the wrong track from an intellectual perspective. But if that's what we choose, and we choose to build a negative idea, I'm not going to be able to reach my goal because, and we're looking outside at our results, and we don't see the money. We don't see the resources of how to get there. Then we're going to start to experience something else that we don't want, because when we turn the negative picture over to our subjective mind, it'll accept anything, doesn't reason, that turns into fear. You see, fear is an emotion that's caused by impressing negative energy upon the emotional mind. It has no ability to change. I said it has no inductive reasoning capacity. It doesn't have a choice. It can't reject. It can only accept. And it's immoral. It'll just accept anything as real. You remember I said it couldn't differentiate what you imagine and what is real. So here's a person doubting their own ability because they haven't got the physical resources that they can see. They don't understand there's a world that they cannot see, but they haven't gone there yet. Well, that fear was caused by impressing a negative idea upon the subjective mind. Whatever's impressed must be expressed on a physical level, and it manifests as anxiety. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. A lot of people experiencing anxiety. There's nothing creative done when an individual is in that vibration. Now, anxiety is not something that you freely express. People that have these feelings of anxiety, they hide it. It's suppressed. Now, when you start to suppress that kind of energy, you suppress that, you're causing your body a lot of problems. Because you're causing your mind a lot of problems, you're making wrong choices, you're utilizing the power of your mind against yourself. Remember in imagination, I said most people imagine what they don't want? They worry, they doubt, causes the fear, the anxiety, suppression. Well, the suppression then turns into depression. Every now and then you'll see a show, a talk show possibly, on television. And somebody will be dealing with depression. And it's like nobody's ever figured out what causes depression. They're into Valium, they're into all kinds of different medications, some kind of drug that is supposed to solve the problem. Drugs do not solve this problem. It may relieve the pain, but it does not solve the problem. When a person's depressed, it's caused by negative energy being suppressed. Now, everything keeps growing. Remember, it's create or disintegrate. This individual's moving in the wrong direction. Why? Well, because they thought of their goal, and then they start to doubt and worry because they can't see the resources or how to get there. Now, if you're saying, well, that makes sense if they can't see how to get there, go study the decision section of this particular series. Take a real close look at the decision section. Everyone that was successful made decisions very fast, changed them very slow, even when they changed them at all. They had no knowledge of how they were going to get there. Hillary did not know how he would get to the top of the mountain. Edison didn't know how he would build the incandescent light. The Wright brothers didn't know how to get the plane off the ground. Ford didn't know how to build the V8 engine. They didn't know how to do these things. They just knew they would do it. This individual is taking the first indication that they can't do it, and they get totally involved in it, and it's causing them the problem. The depression turns into disease. These people actually start getting sick. They go to the doctor. The doctor said, well, what's going on? Well, I don't know. You still doing the same thing? Oh, no, I quit. What are you doing now? Well, I went into sales. Ah. Commission? Yeah, I'm on commission. How are you doing? Well, not very well. Well, there's your problem. Now he's legitimate. He can quit and go back to his job. You see, he's looking for it. He's looking for an out. You know, I learned a long time ago, in every project, there's escape hatches. And if you don't weld them closed, first bump in the road, you're going to hit those escape hatches. Here, a person's getting sick, but they're doing it to themselves. It's got nothing to do with their work. It's got nothing to do with another person. They may be blaming something outside. That's not going to solve their problem. The disease then turns into disintegration. That's why St. Clair Lewis said, we don't die, we kill ourselves. We just do it so slow, we don't understand what's doing. Now, is there an answer to this? There certainly is. And it's in the 13 principles. You study these 13 principles, and I'm going to show you where you're going to go. You're going to start to understand that faith based on understanding is the key to freedom. The faith is such a beautiful concept. Here's a person here who said, control the flow, energy is flowing into the consciousness. What do? Well, rather than doubt and worry, they have done their homework. They're studying the principles. They're studying the laws of their being. They're studying this energy that flows to and through them. They start to relate to the energy. They start to see they are spiritual beings. They have these higher faculties. They've got these creative abilities. They're capable of doing great work. How did they get that understanding? There's only one way. Just one way. You've always seen that one way. The one way is right there in front of you. You've got to study. You've got to study. Now, for a person in my position, school did not make studying an enjoyable thing to do. I never enjoyed studying. Possibly why I left so early, without any formal education, without any understanding to go and offer anyone for a job, so I always had dumb jobs. And that continued until I was 26. And it was because they said you can have anything you want if you just study this. And then he got me to decide what I wanted. I wanted to have some money. I wanted $25,000. That was my first goal. And you know what I know now? I didn't even have to believe it, but I had to write it on a card. I had to put the card in my pocket. And I've been carrying one ever since. For 57 years I've been doing this. When I write on the card, when I touch that card, I trigger the picture in my mind. See, as I touch the card, the sensory factor touch is affected. A light message goes screaming through the central nervous system, strikes a group of cells in my brain. Those cells increase the amplitude of vibration in the picture that's in the flashes on the screen of the mind. Well, by doing that, I started to think of the 25,000. Now, that was an enormous amount of money. I didn't even know anyone with 25,000. If I had taken all the people that I chummed around with, we couldn't have put up 25,000 if we had pooled our money. No one had any money. But I had that goal. He said, you don't have to believe it. Just keep repeating it. Anything you keep repeating, you're going to start believing. So I operated now with a different understanding. And the understanding was developing. It was expanding because I had been studying. And that caused me to have faith. I started to see in my mind myself with the good that I desired, and I was getting emotionally involved in it. And because I impressed that, I didn't get anxiety, I got well-being. You see, when you're involved in the positive side of life, the situation hadn't really changed. I was going on the same goal. There was no indication I was ever going to reach it on the physical level, but it was all up here. And that's where it really starts. You don't have to see it on the physical plane how it's going to happen. Things just begin to happen like that. Things change. But they change here first. See, the well-being isn't suppressed, it's expressed. You see us snapping their walk and the way they act, the way they talk, just the way they carry themselves. There's a feeling of confidence and assurance that you pick up from them. And the expression accelerates. You see, we're into a positive energy. It's directed. It's intelligently directed, which is another subject that we're going to be studying. Organized education, organized information, intelligently directed. What did he say? He said the accumulation of great wealth calls for power. Power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. But he also said that knowledge doesn't have to be in the possession of the person who accumulates the fortune. So you don't even have to do it all yourself. Now, when you start to understand this, you start to see how things do speed up. There is well-being. It's being expressed, and you are accelerating it. Why? Because you're at ease. There's a calmness, a calm confidence about you. You're operating with understanding. The 6 ghosts of fear haven't got a grip on you. You've got a grip on them. You're saying, get out of here. You're not welcome. Think. And because you're at ease, you move into a very creative vibration. You're a creative being. You'll often hear people say, and I used to believe I'm not very creative. The truth is everyone's creative. It's just that some people express their creativity more than others. But we are all very, very creative. In fact, that's all we are. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want? You know, it's all there. You have a choice. You can take the negative side, or you can take the positive side. Now, as you flip back and forth and you look at this, you're going doubt, worry, fear, anxiety, suppression, depression, disease, disintegration. I don't think so. I think I like it over here. Understanding, faith. You can see well-being, expression, acceleration, at ease, creation. There's no comparison in the two ways, and we have a choice. Now, do you know that a high percentage of all the people you know, a high percentage of the population do not operate with this understanding? We do not teach this in school. This whole universe operates by law. Everything happens by law. Tide goes out, the tide comes in. Winter never follows winter. Think about this. Your life is being governed by exact laws. And as you understand it, and then mix these 13 principles into your behavior, your way of life, create a paradigm around them, you're going to have an absolutely magnificent future. I'm not talking about something I've read about. I'm talking about something I'm doing. And you can as well. You've got a choice. It's your choice. I would suggest you make it wisely. What do you really want? Take over and you become the director. You dictate where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And you make up your mind, you are not going to let those ghosts of fear mess around with you. There's not going to be any indecision and worry and fear and doubt. That's going out of here. Why? Because I understand what they do to me and I don't like it. I've been there, I've experienced it, I don't want it. Go on the other side. Go with the study, the understanding. It'll give you everything you want. Remember I said if you do exactly what I tell you, you can give anything you want? That's what they told me. I believe it and I got it. I earn a lot of money, I have a lot of fun. I live in a healthy body, I've got wonderful friends. I came from nowhere, from just the darkest part of life, and it changed. Not only has it changed for me, I've helped millions of people change their life. And I want you to be the next one. I want you to really study this. I want you to really understand this, understand it in depth, and know that you can have whatever you want. Lock yourself into an hour a day. Listen to the same lesson over and over and over again. You can go through them all to satisfy your curiosity, but then go back to the first one. And just play it so often, you can almost say it word for word what I'm saying. That's how I got it, and it worked. And that's how you can get it. Don't let fear get you. Get rid of it. Ignorance, let it go. Replace it with knowledge. Well, you've covered some pretty powerful information here. There's something I learned that I want to share with you. It said no amount of reading or memorizing is going to make a person successful in life. It's their understanding and application of wise thoughts that count. I would imagine as we went through all these various principles, these ideas, that your intellect agreed with everything. But that doesn't mean that you're going to do it. And if you don't act on it, it'll change nothing in your life. It'll just be some information that you're going to wander around with, but it'll be pretty well useless. The information's been here all along. This information can be used by anyone, anywhere. Age, gender, really doesn't matter. And I became acutely aware of this here, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. I was doing a lot of work for a company that had a few thousand millennials in the company. And I'd be speaking, sharing many of these ideas at one of their big conventions or a big regional meeting. And I would hear all these young millennials in the audience yell, "We love you, Bobby P." At first I was wondering, what's this all about? "We love you, Bobby P." And I was to find out later on they just loved the ideas that I was sharing with them. So I started to analyze it. And my mind went back to the time I was out of school. I was 16. And I was rejecting everything. I was just a kid that didn't want to fall in line. I didn't want to pay attention to what was going on. I didn't want to follow anybody's advice. And it cost me dearly for the next 10 years. I worked at dumb jobs. I couldn't hold a job until I was 26. And that's when a man gave me this book. It's Napoleon Hill's Principles of Success. And he said, if you do exactly what I tell you and follow the information in this book, you can have anything you want. Well, my mind went back to then and the change that took place in my life. And then it come to these young millennials again. "We love you, Bobby P." See, they were rejecting life much the same as I was, but they were rejecting it for a good sound reason. They found out the rules we were being taught didn't work. They found out that they would go to school, invest all kinds of money in an education, and when they'd leave, that degree was not a ticket to La La Land. It gave them nothing. They still had to go out and perform. And another thing we want to keep in mind, we are programmed to go against the rules that are really laid down by Napoleon Hill. We're programmed to go against them. Now, I really want you to think about what you've been listening to. The millennials are rejecting the information because they found out the rules don't work. And so they're out trying to figure out how to make it work. And when they heard me bring in Napoleon Hill's principles, the laws of success, like that, they went for it. They liked it because it was more in harmony with their way of thinking, the entrepreneurial way of thinking. So keep thinking about this. If you really want to win, you've got to internalize what you're watching into the subjective mind, the subconscious mind. You see, the part of us that agrees with all this is our intellect. And we listen and we analyze it and we say, yeah, that makes sense. But it's not our intellect that's controlling our behavior. And one of the problems with school, they give you all this general knowledge. You've got it all, you've passed the exams, you got the degree. But that's not the part of your mind that controls your behavior. And our subconscious mind is programmed genetically and then environmentally. Take a look at your behavior. Take a look at your results. The results aren't what you want. The results would indicate you don't know much, and yet your degrees indicate you do know quite a bit. See, the part of the mind that gathers the information that knows quite a bit is not the part that controls the behavior of this thing we're living in our body. And it's our behavior that determines our results. Think about it. It's called a paradigm. That's the conditioning. That's the program in the subjective mind. It's genetic. That's why you look like your relatives. And then it's environmental. It's the programming we received in our little life, and then went on to school, and the program continued. And you see, the millennials got out of school, and they started to reject the way, because they were thinking. I was rejecting it because I wasn't thinking. I would have rejected everything. The millennials and myself at a certain age fell into the same category. I rejected for the wrong reason. They're rejecting for the right reason. But we're rejecting this idea that you get a job in a big company and you keep your nose to the grindstone, everything's going to come out roses. That's not true. You might be in a company a very short period of time if you're really applying yourself, using these principles of success that Napoleon Hill talked about. Like that, you're going to go ahead. Good things are going to start to happen. You see, this is the result of an entire lifetime of research by a very, very good reporter. He studied some of the most successful people alive. He was being mentored by a man that was the wealthiest man in the world at that time. These ideas apply today the same as they did over 100 years or 2,000 years ago. Hill's principles of success are an absolute, perfect track to whatever you want. The man that gave me the book, he said, Bob, do exactly what I'm suggesting until you find out I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I have a company today that operates all over the world. I earn millions of dollars a year. I work with some of the most fascinating people alive, and I travel all over the world. I'm probably older than most millennials' grandparents, but I've got as much energy as a millennial. Why is that? Why is it the same idea applies to me, applies to the 30-year-old that's out there really ready to make things cook? Because we're dealing with absolute laws that have nothing to do with age, gender, conditions, circumstance. None of those things matter. What matters is, what do you think? Where are you going? What rules are you following? Because they're all here. You've got them all. You've just looked at them. Use them. Now understand this. Your paradigm is your habitual way of living. Your paradigm is a multitude of ideas that control almost all of your habitual behavior. And almost all of your behavior is habitual. It is not going to be easy to execute these principles, but the reward is astronomical. It wasn't easy for me to follow this when I was 26. I was going that way, and all of a sudden I started to go that way. But you know something? My income went from $4,000 a year to $15,000 a month in 1 year. Then it went over $1 million. I honestly believe I can show anyone how to do anything, because it doesn't matter what the objective is. If you're following the laws, if you're following the principles, as Napoleon Hill's laid them down, after a lifetime of research, you're going to win. But you've got to turn these principles into habits. It isn't going to happen by accident. It's going to happen by design, and it's going to happen by decision. Go back and review decision. Review it. We said the only prerequisite to making a decision to do something is, do you want to? It isn't, do you have the money? It isn't, do you have the help? It isn't, do you have the information? None of that matters. It's, do you want to? And if you say, yes, I want to do this, and you make a decision to do it, you will flip your brain onto the frequency it has to be on to attract whatever you need to do whatever you want to do. Napoleon Hill had an innate awareness of that after a lifetime of studying with the wealthiest and the wisest in the world. It's all in the principles of success. You've got them. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're male or female. I don't care what you've done in the past. You see, I know my past was terrible, useless, just useless. And like that, it all changed when I did exactly what Ray Stanford told me. Do what's in the book. Do exactly what I tell you, and you can have anything you want. Sounds like a gross exaggeration. I'm going to tell you something. It's those principles and laws that put us on the moon. It's those principles and laws that took Apple to where they are, the largest company in the world as I'm recording this. How did that happen? Didn't happen by accident, happens by law. We said there's an intelligence that turns an acorn into an oak tree. Well, I'm going to tell you something. There's an intelligence that'll turn you into whatever you want to be if you subject yourself and discipline yourself to live by these principles. They work every time for every person. You make these ideas a part of your way of thinking, a part of your way of life, and I guarantee you, life is going to be phenomenal. I've truly enjoyed doing this. It's been a real work of love. I've been studying Hill's material all my adult life, 57 years, every day. He said, read the book every day. Fortunately, I did, and I'm still reading it every day. The book has fallen apart. It's literally fallen apart. Look, at pages are coming out of it. But you know something? The ideas are still in it. And the ideas are in here. Make sure you take them and internalize them. Turn them into your way of thinking, your way of life. And I guarantee you, life is going to be everything that God intended it to be. It's going to be phenomenal. I would remind you that life is a checkerboard. And the player opposite you is time. If you hesitate before moving or neglect to move promptly, your men will be wiped off the board by time. You're playing against a partner who will not tolerate indecision. Learn to make the passage of time an ally, a supportive teammate that is encouraging you, cheering you on. Choose to see time and the way it frames all of our lives as a motivator, a trusted companion. Previously, you may have had a logical excuse for not having forced life to come through with whatever you asked. But that alibi is now obsolete because you are in possession of the knowledge that unlocks the door to life's bountiful riches.